In the shadows of a mafia mansion, a woman is running, not from an enemy, but from her own family. Elena Varelli has spent years hiding a dangerous secret. She's in love with Lucian, the untouchable heir who sees her as nothing more than a protected child. Tonight, at her own engagement party, she's making her escape. But when the elevator doors open, he's standing there, cold, furious, and ready to destroy her plan with a single word. Will she choose freedom or the man who could ruin everything? Like this video, comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels, and stay until the end to see how it all unfolds. Stop. The champagne glass in Elena's hand trembled, just barely. Not enough for anyone to notice. Not enough to give herself away. She stood at the edge of the grand ballroom, surrounded by silk gowns and dangerous men in $1,000 suits, and she smiled like her heart wasn't trying to claw its way out of her chest. "You look beautiful tonight." Adrian's voice came from behind her, warm and familiar in a way that used to mean something. Like you were made for this. Elena turned, keeping her expression neutral. Adrian Cole stood there with that easy confidence he always wore, the kind that came from being born into money but not into blood. He was handsome in an obvious way, sharp jaw, perfect smile, eyes that knew exactly how to soften at the right moment. 6 months ago, those eyes had convinced her he understood her, that he saw past the Varelli name and the weight it carried. She'd been wrong. "Thank you," she said, her voice steady. "You clean up well yourself." He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne. Expensive. Everything about Adrian was expensive and carefully curated. "I've been trying to talk to you all week. You've been avoiding me." "I've been busy." "Too busy for me?" His smile didn't quite reach his eyes now. "We need to talk about us, Elena. Really talk. Not these surface conversations where you pretend everything's fine." Her fingers tightened around the champagne flute. "There is no us, Adrian. I thought I made that clear." "You made it clear you were scared." He reached for her hand, but she pulled back. "I get it. Your family, the pressure, all of this." He gestured vaguely at the ballroom filled with the city's most powerful crime families. "It's a lot, but you don't have to go through it alone." Elena felt the familiar crawl of frustration under her skin. This was exactly why she'd ended things. Adrian talked like he understood, but he didn't. He saw her as something to be rescued, protected, sheltered from the darkness of her own world. He had no idea that the darkness wasn't what scared her. What scared her was standing across the room, talking to 3 men who looked like they'd kill for him without question. Lucian Varelli, her cousin, the heir, the ghost who'd haunted every corner of her mind for 5 years. He stood with his back to her, but she'd memorized that silhouette anywhere. Tall, lean in a way that hid the violence he was capable of, wearing a black suit that probably cost more than most people's cars. His dark hair was pushed back, and even from here she could see the sharp line of his jaw, the way he held himself like he owned not just the room, but everyone in it. She'd loved him since she was 18. He'd never looked at her twice. "Elena." Adrian's voice pulled her back. "Are you even listening to me?" "I'm listening," she lied. "And my answer hasn't changed. We're done, Adrian." "I'm sorry, but we are." His expression hardened just for a second. Then the mask slipped back into place. "You don't mean that." "I do." "Is there someone else?" The question hung in the air between them like a blade. Elena forced herself to meet his eyes, to keep her face blank. "No, there's no one else. I just don't want to do this anymore." "This?" "Us. The relationship. Any of it." Adrian studied her for a long moment, and something shifted in his expression, something darker, less polished. "You're lying." "I'm not." "You are." He leaned in, his voice dropping. "I know you, Elena, better than you think, and I know when you're hiding something." Her pulse kicked up, but she held her ground. "You need to let this go." "I will," he said quietly, "when you tell me the truth." Before she could respond, a hand settled on her lower back. Light, possessive. She didn't have to turn to know who it was. Her entire body recognized the touch before her mind caught up. "Cole." Lucian's voice was smooth, controlled, carrying just enough ice to make it a warning. You're making Elena uncomfortable. Adrian stepped back, his expression shifting into something careful. Lucien, I didn't realize you were paying attention? Lucian's hand stayed exactly where it was, and Elena felt the heat of it through the thin fabric of her dress. I always pay attention. There was a beat of silence. Adrian looked between them, and Elena saw the exact moment understanding flickered across his face. His jaw tightened. Of course, Adrian said, his tone polite but strained. I was just congratulating Elena on the engagement announcement, though I noticed she's not wearing a ring yet. Elena's stomach dropped. The engagement. She'd almost forgotten about the reason for tonight's party. The announcement her father planned to make. An arrangement with the Romano family, a strategic alliance wrapped up in marriage vows and a diamond she'd never asked for. There is no engagement, Elena said sharply. Both men looked at her. Lucien's hand tensed against her back. Your father seems to think otherwise, Adrian said. He's been telling everyone tonight that you'll be engaged by the end of the month. My father says a lot of things. Elena! Lucien's voice carried a warning now. Don't. She turned to face him, and the mistake hit her immediately. Up close, he was devastating. Cold gray eyes that saw too much, a mouth that never quite smiled, and a face that could have been carved from marble if marble could look that cruel and that beautiful at the same time. Don't what? She challenged. Don't contradict my father. Don't have an opinion about my own life. Don't make a scene. I'm not making a scene. I'm stating a fact. I'm not getting engaged to Marco Romano or anyone else. Lucian's eyes narrowed. We'll discuss this later. No, we won't, because it's not your decision. Everything in this family is my decision. The words landed like a slap. Elena felt something crack inside her chest, something that had been holding on for too long. Right, of course. How could I forget? She pulled away from him, setting her champagne glass down on a nearby table with enough force that it rattled. She could feel people starting to watch, could sense the shift in the room's energy. Varelis didn't fight in public. Varelis presented a united front, always. She didn't care anymore. Elena, Lucian said, his voice dropping to that dangerous quiet that made grown men nervous. Walk away right now, and I promise you'll regret it. She met his eyes. I already regret plenty. Then she turned and headed for the exit, her heels clicking against the marble floor. She could feel both Lucien and Adrian watching her, could feel the weight of 100 other eyes tracking her movement. Let them watch. Let them all see her leave. She made it to the hallway before Adrian caught up. Elena, wait. He grabbed her arm and she spun to face him. What's going on? What was that back there? Let go of me. Not until you tell me what's happening. Is this about Lucien? Because if he's pressuring you, Adrian, I'm asking you nicely, let go. He didn't. His grip tightened, and she saw something flash in his eyes that she'd never seen before. Anger. Real anger. Not the controlled kind. You're in love with him. It wasn't a question. Elena's heart stopped. What? Lucien, you're in love with him. That's why you broke up with me. That's why you won't even look at me anymore. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? He laughed, but it was bitter. I should have seen it sooner. The way you watch him when you think no one's looking. The way you tense up whenever he's in the room. The way you just stood there and let him put his hand on you like he owned you. Well, he doesn't own me. Are you sure? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you'd let him do whatever he wanted. She yanked her arm free. We're done here. We're not even close to done. Adrian stepped into her space, and for the first time since she'd known him, she felt a flicker of real fear. You think you can just walk away from me after everything? After I've spent months trying to understand you, trying to be what you needed? I never asked you to. You didn't have to ask. I could see you were suffering, trapped in this world, surrounded by monsters. I wanted to save you. I don't need saving. Yes, you do. You just don't know it yet. His expression shifted, something calculating moving behind his eyes. And if you won't let me do it willingly, maybe I'll have to find another way. The threat was clear. Elena's pulse spiked. Adrian, you're making a mistake, Elena. Lucien Varelli will never love you. He's not capable of it. He'll use you, control you, and when he's done, he'll discard you like he does everything else. That's not your concern. It is when I care about you. You don't care about me, she said, her voice cold now. You care about the idea of me, the damsel in distress you can rescue from the big bad mafia family. But I'm not a damsel, Adrian, and this isn't a fairy tale. His jaw clenched. You're going to regret this. Maybe, but it'll be my regret to carry. She turned and walked away, her heart hammering. She could feel him watching her, could sense the shift in his energy from pleading to something darker. But she didn't look back. She couldn't afford to. She made it to the elevator at the end of the hall and stabbed the button with more force than necessary. The doors slid open immediately, thank God, and she stepped inside. Her hands were shaking now, adrenaline flooding her system. The plan was simple. Get to her room, grab the bag she'd packed earlier, and disappear. She had money stashed away, a car waiting 3 blocks from the mansion, and a contact who could get her across the state line before anyone realized she was gone. She'd been planning this for weeks, waiting for the right moment. Tonight was it. During the engagement party, when everyone would be too drunk and too distracted to notice she was missing until it was too late. She just needed to make it to the underground garage, get to her car, and the elevator doors started to close. A hand shot out, stopping them. Elena's breath caught as the doors slid back open. Lucien stood there, his expression unreadable. Going somewhere? Her mind raced. My room. I have a headache. Liar. He stepped into the elevator and the doors closed behind him. The space suddenly felt too small, too intimate. Elena pressed herself against the back wall, trying to put distance between them, but there was nowhere to go. Lucien reached over and hit the emergency stop button. The elevator lurched to a halt. What are you doing? She demanded. Keeping you from making the biggest mistake of your life. You don't get to decide what's a mistake for me. I do when it involves this family. I'm not family, she shot back. Not really. I'm just the daughter your uncle took in when my parents died. A charity case with a famous last name. Something flickered across his face, anger maybe, or something that looked almost like pain. Is that what you think? It's what I know. Then you're even more naive than I thought. The word stung, but she pushed past it. Let me go, Lucien. No. I'm not asking. Neither am I. He took a step closer, and she felt the wall against her back. You want to run? Fine, but you're going to look me in the eye and tell me why. I don't owe you an explanation. You owe this family everything. I owe this family nothing, she said, her voice rising. I didn't ask to be brought into this world. I didn't ask for any of this, and I'm done pretending like I'm okay with it. So you're just going to leave? Tonight? During a party being thrown in your honor? It's not in my honor. It's a business transaction. I'm being sold off to Marco Romano like a piece of property, and everyone's pretending it's something to celebrate. You're not being sold. No? Then what do you call it when my father announces my engagement to a man I've never even had a real conversation with? Lucien's jaw tightened. It's politics. It's my life. Your life belongs to this family. That's exactly my point, she said, her voice breaking. I don't have a life. I have an obligation, and I'm done. For a long moment, they just stared at each other. Elena could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands had curled into fists at his sides. He was angry. Good. He wanted him angry. Angry was better than indifferent. Where were you planning to go? He asked finally. Anywhere. Everywhere. It doesn't matter. It matters to me. Why? So you can drag me back? Lock me in my room until the wedding? So I can keep you safe? She laughed, and it came out sharp and broken. Safe from what? The only thing I need to be safe from is this family. Is you. His expression shuddered. Me? Yes, you. The words tumbled out before she could stop them. 5 years of frustration and longing and heartbreak spilling over. Do you have any idea what it's like? Being around you every day, watching you treat me like I'm made of glass? Like I'm something to be protected and managed and kept at arm's length? Elena, I'm not a child, Lucien. I haven't been a child for a long time. But you look at me like I'm still that 18-year-old girl who showed up here scared and lost. You won't let me into the real business. You won't let me help with anything that matters. And now you're going to stand here and act like you have any right to stop me from leaving? I have every right, he said, his voice dangerously quiet. Because you're mine to protect. I'm not yours. I'm not anyone's. You're wrong. He moved fast, closing the distance between them in 2 steps. His hands came up to frame her face, tilting it toward his, and for one dizzying second she thought he might actually… But he didn't kiss her. He just held her there, his thumbs brushing her cheekbones, his gray eyes boring into hers with an intensity that made her knees weak. You want to know why I keep you at arm's length? His voice was rough now, stripped of its usual control. Because if I didn't, I'd ruin you. I'd take everything you are and twist it into something dark and broken, and I've been trying, God, I've been trying so hard not to do that. Elena's heart was pounding so hard she could barely hear her own thoughts. What are you saying? I'm saying you're right. You're not a child. You haven't been for years, and I've noticed. I've noticed every single day, and it's been killing me. Lucienne, do you know what it's been like? Watching you grow into this beautiful, fierce woman while knowing I can't touch you, can't have you. That I have to stand back and watch idiots like Cole try to… He stopped himself, his jaw working. You think I don't see you? You think I don't know? Her breath came in short gasps. Know what? That you love me. The world tilted. Elena tried to step back, but there was nowhere to go. Don't lie. Not now. Not about this. His grip on her face gentled, but his eyes stayed fierce. I've known for over a year, maybe longer, and I've been pretending I didn't, because acknowledging it would mean facing what I feel, and I can't… His voice cracked. I can't let myself feel that. Why not? Because I'm not good for you. Because everything I touch turns to poison. Because you deserve better than a man who's killed more people than he can count, and who'd burn the world down if it meant keeping you safe. Tears stung her eyes. You don't get to decide what I deserve. Someone has to. You sure as hell won't. So what? She fought against the emotion clogging her throat. You're just going to push me away forever? Watch me marry someone else? Pretend this doesn't exist? His expression twisted into something anguished. Yes, that's not fair. Life's not fair, princess. Welcome to the real world. The nickname hit like a slap. He'd called her that once, years ago, when she'd complained about some trivial thing. She'd hated it then. She hated it now. Let me go, she whispered. No. Lucienne, please. The elevator jolted suddenly, not from the emergency stop, but from something else. A distant boom echoed through the shaft, and the lights flickered. They both froze. What was that? Elena asked. Lucienne's entire demeanor changed in an instant. The vulnerable man who'd been touching her face disappeared, replaced by the cold, efficient killer she knew he could be. He pulled a gun from somewhere inside his jacket. When had he even brought that? And moved to position himself between her and the elevator doors. Stay behind me, he ordered. What's happening? I don't know. But whatever it is, it's not good. Another boom, closer this time. The elevator shook. Lucian pulled out his phone with his free hand and dialed quickly. Marco, what's your location? A pause. Understood. Get everyone to the safe room. Now. He hung up and looked at Elena. We need to move. Move where? We're stuck in an elevator. He holstered the gun and reached up, pushing against the ceiling panel. It popped free, and he pulled himself up with the kind of upper body strength that came from years of training. He looked down at her, extending his hand. Come on. You want me to climb out of the elevator? Unless you want to wait around to see who's bombing my house, yes. She grabbed his hand and he hauled her up like she weighed nothing. They emerged into the elevator shaft, and Elena immediately regretted wearing heels. The gap between the elevator and the shaft wall was narrow, the drop below them dark and terrifying. Don't look down, Lucian said. Wasn't planning on it. He found the maintenance ladder and tested it. It'll hold. Follow me and don't stop until we reach the top. They climbed. Elena's arms burned, her dress caught on every rung, and somewhere below them she could hear shouts and the distinctive sound of gunfire. Real gunfire, not the kind from movies. Someone was attacking the mansion during a party filled with every major crime family in the city. This was either the boldest move she'd ever seen or the stupidest. They reached the top of the shaft, and Lucy forced open a service door that led into a maintenance corridor. He pulled her through and immediately started moving, his gun drawn again. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Control room. I need to see what we're dealing with." They navigated through a maze of service hallways that Elena didn't even know existed. Lucien moved with absolute certainty, like he'd mapped every inch of this place in his mind. They emerged into a small room filled with security monitors. 3 men were already there, all armed, all looking grim. They snapped to attention when Lucien entered. "Status," he demanded. "East Wing's been compromised," one of them said. "At least 20 hostiles, maybe more. They came in through the service entrance, professional, military-grade weapons." "Casualties?" "Unknown. We've evacuated most of the guests to the safe room, but we're getting reports of scattered groups pinned down in different locations. Who's behind it? Still identifying. They're not wearing colors." Lucien studied the monitors, his expression unreadable. Elena watched him work, watched the way he processed information and made decisions without hesitation. This was the Lucien the world saw, cold, calculating, utterly in control. Then his eyes landed on one specific monitor, and something changed. "Pull up camera 12. The man complied. The screen showed the ballroom, or what was left of it. Tables overturned, champagne spilled across marble, and in the center of it all, "Adrian," Elena breathed. He stood surrounded by armed men, all of them taking orders from him. As they watched, he gestured to someone off-screen, and 2 more men dragged in a struggling figure. Elena's blood went cold. "That's my father." Lucien's jaw clenched. "Get Marco on the line. Tell him we have a traitor. Already on it." On the screen, Adrian said something to her father. Even without audio, Elena could see the fear in her father's eyes, the way he tried to pull away when Adrian leaned in close. "He's been feeding someone information," Lucien said quietly. "That's how they knew our security protocols, how they knew when to hit us." "But why?" Elena couldn't process it. "Adrian has no stake in this. He's not even part of the life." "Isn't he?" Lucien's eyes found hers. "He's been dating you for months, Elena, getting close to the family, learning our routines, and tonight, when you broke up with him, understanding hit her like a freight train. This is my fault." "No, this is his choice." "But if I hadn't—" "Don't." Lucien turned to her fully, his expression fierce. "Don't you dare blame yourself for this. He made his decision long before tonight." Another explosion rocked the building, closer this time. The lights flickered and died, plunging them into darkness before the emergency generators kicked in. "We need to move," one of the security men said. "They're heading for the control room." Lucien nodded. "Elena, you're going to the safe room with—" "No!" He looked at her like she'd lost her mind. "This isn't a negotiation." "You're right. It's not. I'm not hiding while my family is under attack." "Your family is exactly why you need to hide. If they get their hands on you, they already have my father. If Adrian's working with whoever this is, he knows exactly how valuable I am as leverage." She met his eyes, refusing to back down. "I can help." "You're untrained. I'm smart. And I know Adrian better than anyone. I can anticipate what he'll do." Lucien studied her for a long moment. Elena could see him weighing options, calculating risks. Finally, he swore under his breath, "You stay with me. You don't leave my sight. And if I tell you to run, you run. Understood?" "Understood." He handed her a gun from one of the security lockers. "You know how to use this?" "You'd be surprised what I know." Something that might have been approval flickered in his eyes. "Let's go." They moved as a unit through the service corridors, Lucien leading with 2 guards flanking them. Elena's heart pounded, but her hand stayed steady on the gun. She'd been trained, secretly against her father's wishes, by a private instructor she'd hired with money skimmed from her allowance. She'd known, even then, that the sheltered life wouldn't last forever. They reached a junction, and Lucien held up a fist. Everyone froze. Voices echoed from the hallway ahead, male, armed, speaking in clipped, professional tones. Lucian signaled to his men, and they moved with practiced efficiency. Two broke off to flank the hostiles, while Lucian and one guard stayed with Elena. The confrontation was brief and brutal. 3 shots, 2 bodies hitting the floor, and then silence. "Clear," one of the guards called. They kept moving. The mansion that Elena had grown up in felt foreign now, transformed into a war zone. They passed bodies, some she recognized, some she didn't. Each one felt like a weight settling on her chest. This was her world. This was what she'd been trying to escape. They made it to the safe room entrance, a reinforced steel door hidden behind a false panel in the library. Lucien entered a code, and the door swung open to reveal chaos. At least 40 people crammed into a space designed for 20. Women in evening gowns huddled together, men shouted into phones, and in the center of it all stood Marco Virelli, her father's enforcer, Lucien's second-in-command, coordinating the defense. He looked up when they entered, relief flashing across his scarred face. "Thank God. We've been trying to reach you. Communications jammed?" Selectively. Whoever planned this knew exactly what they were doing. Marco's eyes found Elena. "She shouldn't be here." "She insisted," Lucian said dryly. "Of course she did. She's a Virelli." Marco gestured to the monitors. "We've contained them to the east wing, but they're dug in. And they have Dominic." Elena's father. The confirmation made her knees weak, but she locked them. "How many hostiles?" "Best estimate? 30, maybe more. They keep rotating positions to make themselves look like a bigger force." "Smart," Lucien murmured. "Who's leading them?" "Your girlfriend." Elena flinched. Lucien's expression went glacial. "She's not my girlfriend. And yes, I know. I saw the feeds." "Adrian Cole." Marco shook his head. "I never trusted that pretty boy. Too smooth, too eager to please." "He's been working with someone," Lucian said. "This operation is too sophisticated for him to have planned alone. Who benefits from attacking us tonight? Pick a name. The Romanos, the Castellanos, the New York families, hell, even internal rivals. We're at our most vulnerable during a gathering like this." "No." Elena stepped forward, her mind racing. "It's not about vulnerability. It's about witnesses." Both men looked at her. "Think about it," she continued. "Every major family in the city is here tonight. If something happens, if my father dies, if Lucien dies, everyone will see it. There's no way to hide it or spin the story. Whoever's behind this wants a very public execution." Lucian's eyes sharpened. "To send a message. Or to destabilize the entire power structure," Marco added. "Take out the leadership in front of everyone, create a vacuum, and step in to fill it." "So who steps in?" Elena asked. "Who benefits most?" The answer hit all 3 of them at the same time. "Romano?" Lucian said flatly. Marco swore. "The engagement announcement. It was supposed to be tonight. If something happened to Dominic before he could formally announce it." "Marco Romano becomes the heir apparent by default," Elena finished. "As the designated husband, he'd have a legitimate claim to the family's holdings." "That bastard!" Lucian's voice was pure ice. "He's been planning this from the beginning. The engagement wasn't an alliance. It was a hostile takeover." "And Adrian?" Elena asked quietly. "A useful idiot. Someone expendable who could be blamed when everything went sideways." Lucian turned to Marco. "Where's Romano now?" "Safe room. Been here the whole time." "Convenient. Get him." Marco hesitated. "If we're wrong about this..." "We're not. Get him." Marco moved through the crowd, and Elena watched as he pulled a distinguished older man from a group near the back. Marco Romano, not to be confused with his son, was in his 60s, silver-haired, with the kind of face that photographed well, trustworthy, fatherly, a complete lie. He approached with a concerned expression. "Lucien, thank God you're safe. This is a catastrophe. Who could have... Save it!" Lucien's gun came up, pointed directly at Romano's chest. "I know it was you." The room went silent. Romano's expression shifted, the concern melting into something colder. "That's a serious accusation. It's a fact. You orchestrated this attack to destabilize the family and position yourself as the natural successor. The engagement to Elena was just cover. You have no proof." "I have enough." Lucian gestured to the monitors. Your men are very distinctive. Same tactical formation you used in the Castano takeover. Same entry pattern, same rotation strategy. You might have hired different soldiers, but the playbook's identical. Romano's eyes hardened. Even if that were true, and I'm not saying it is, you can't do anything about it. Not here, not in front of all these witnesses. Kill me now, and you prove you're unstable, that the family needs new leadership. He's right, Elena said quietly. Both men looked at her. Killing him solves nothing. We need my father back. We need to end this without more bloodshed. And we need to do it in a way that exposes Romano without making Lucian look like a tyrant. I am a tyrant, Lucian said. Yes, but you're our tyrant. There's a difference. She turned to Romano. You want to negotiate? Fine, let's negotiate. Romano's expression turned calculating. What do you propose? A trade. Me for my father. No, Lucian said immediately. She ignored him. Adrian wants me. That's why he's here. Why he agreed to help you. His attack tonight wasn't random. I broke up with him hours ago, and this is his way of trying to force my hand. So give him what he wants. Give him me. Elena, in exchange, you get your men out clean. No retaliation, no pursuit. You retreat. We pretend this was an outside attack and everyone walks away. Romano studied her with interest. And why would I agree to that? Because the alternative is Lucy Yen kills you right now, and damn the consequences. He won't. Too many witnesses. Are you sure? She let the question hang. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you seriously underestimated how far he'll go to protect this family. And me. Something flickered in Romano's eyes. Understanding, maybe, or fear. He looked at Lucien, whose expression promised death, and made his calculation. 1 hour, he said. I'll arrange the trade. But if you double-cross me, we won't, Elena said. You have my word. The word of a Virelli. Romano laughed bitterly. That and $5 will get me a coffee. He pulled out his phone and made a call. Elena couldn't hear the other end, but she watched his face carefully, looking for tells. When he hung up, he nodded. They'll do it. Main ballroom, 30 minutes. I'm coming with her, Lucian said. No, she comes alone or no deal. That's not happening. Then we have no deal. Romano pocketed his phone. Your choice, Virelli. Your pride or her father's life. The silence stretched. Elena could see Lucien's jaw working, could see the war playing out behind his eyes. Finally, he looked at her. Do you trust me? He asked quietly. Always. Then trust me now. He turned to Marco. Get the vest. Marco disappeared and returned with a bulletproof vest thin enough to hide under clothing. Elena stripped off her jacket, aware of eyes on her but not caring, and let them strap it on. It was heavier than she expected, pressing against her ribs. It won't stop everything, Lucian warned, but it'll give you a chance, and you won't be alone. What are you planning? Something stupid. He cupped her face, the gesture almost tender. I need you to trust that I'm not going to let anything happen to you. Can you do that? Elena looked into his gray eyes and saw the truth there. Not love, not quite, but something close, something fierce and protective and entirely focused on her. Yes, she whispered. He leaned in, his forehead touching hers. When you get to the ballroom, stall. Ask questions, make demands, do whatever you have to do to buy time. And when you hear the signal, what signal? You'll know it when you hear it. When that happens, drop. Immediately. Don't think, don't hesitate. Just drop and cover your head. Lucian, promise me. I promise. He pulled back and the moment of vulnerability disappeared. He was all business again, already moving, already planning. Marco, get the team in position. I want shooters on every angle, but keep them hidden. Romano's men are good, but they're not that good. They'll miss something. Marco grinned. What do you want me to miss? Everything. 20 minutes later, Elena stood outside the ballroom doors. Her hands were steady, her breathing controlled. The vest pressed against her ribs with every breath, a constant reminder of the danger she was walking into. The doors opened. The ballroom looked like a war zone, tables overturned, glass everywhere, bullet holes pockmarking the walls. And in the center of it all, Adrian stood with a gun pointed at her father's head. Dominic Virelli looked smaller than she remembered, older. Blood trickled from a cut above his eye, and his hands were bound behind his back. But his eyes were fierce and focused entirely on her. "Don't do this, Elena," he called out. "Shut up," Adrian snapped. Then to her, "I knew you'd come." Elena walked forward slowly, her heels clicking on broken glass. "Let him go, Adrian. Not yet. First we talk. There's nothing to talk about. There's everything to talk about." He gestured with the gun, making her father flinch. "You really think you can just walk away from me? After everything?" "I already did." "Because of him." Adrian's expression twisted. "Lucien Virelli, the great untouchable prince. You think he loves you? You think he'll ever choose you over his precious family? This isn't about Lucien." "Everything's about Lucien!" Adrian's voice rose, cracking. "I tried to save you from this world. I tried to give you a way out, but you'd rather stay here in this nightmare, pining after a man who sees you as property." "He doesn't." "He does. They all do. You're just another asset to be managed, another piece on the board. But I saw you differently. I saw you as a person, as someone worth saving." Elena took another step closer. "If you really saw me, you'd know I don't need saving." "Then what do you need?" "To be free to make my own choices, even if they're wrong, even if they hurt." Adrian stared at her for a long moment. Then he lowered the gun from her father's head and pointed it at her instead. Wrong answer. Everything happened at once. A whistle, sharp and piercing, cut through the air. Elena dropped, muscle memory taking over before her brain caught up. Gunfire erupted from 3 directions, and Adrian's men scattered. Someone grabbed her father and dragged him behind an overturned table. Elena stayed flat, her face pressed against cold marble as bullets flew overhead. Then hands grabbed her, rough, urgent, and hauled her backward. She twisted, saw Adrian's face twisted in rage, and realized he'd gotten to her first. "You bitch," he hissed, dragging her toward the exit. "You set me up." She drove her elbow backward into his ribs. He grunted but held on, the gun now pressed against her temple. "Let her go, Cole." Lucien's voice, cold, final. Adrian spun, using Elena as a shield. "Not a chance. She's mine. She was never yours. And she's yours? Is that it? The great Lucien Virelli finally admitting he wants something? I'm admitting I'll kill you if you don't let her go in the next 3 seconds." Big words from a man who's outnumbered. "Look around, Cole. Your men are down. Romano's men have abandoned you. You're alone." Elena could feel Adrian's breathing quicken, could feel the tremor in his hand. Panic. He was panicking, which made him dangerous. "You know what?" Adrian's voice went cold. "If I can't have her, no one can." His finger tightened on the trigger. Elena didn't think. She twisted hard, using every ounce of self-defense training she'd secretly acquired. Adrian's grip loosened just enough. The gun went off. Pain exploded through her shoulder, white-hot and blinding. She hit the ground hard, her vision swimming. Distantly, she heard more gunfire, heard Adrian scream, heard Lucien shouting her name. Then hands, gentle hands, were on her face. "Elena, Elena, look at me." She forced her eyes open. Lucien's face hovered above her, pale and terrified in a way she'd never seen before. "Vest," she managed. "I'm vest." The bullet went above it. "Your shoulder. Can you move?" She tried. White-hot agony shot through her, but she could wiggle her fingers. "Yes." "Good. That's good. Stay with me, okay? Stay with me." She wanted to. She really did. But the darkness was so tempting, and she was so tired. The last thing she saw before everything went black was Lucien's face, and the last thing she heard was his voice, cracked and broken, saying her name like a prayer. When she woke up, The ceiling was white, clean, hospital white. Elena tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Pain lanced through her shoulder, making her gasp. Don't move. She turned her head carefully. Lucien sat in a chair beside her bed, looking like he hadn't slept in days. His shirt was wrinkled, his hair disheveled, and there were dark circles under his eyes. How long? She asked, her voice rough. 18 hours. The bullet missed anything vital, but you lost a lot of blood. His eyes met hers. You scared the hell out of me. Is my father? Fine. Shaken up, but fine. He's been here 3 times already. So has Marco. And Adrian? Lucien's expression went flat. Dead. He tried to shoot you again after you went down. I didn't give him the chance? Elena absorbed that. She should feel something. Guilt, maybe, or sorrow. But all she felt was tired relief. And Romano? Being dealt with. Turns out several other families took exception to his little power play. He won't be a problem anymore. The family? Intact. Pissed off, but intact. Will rebuild. She studied his face, seeing the weight he carried. You blamed yourself. Of course I did. I let you walk into that room. I should have... You should have what? Locked me up? Treated me like a child? Nzen. She reached out with her good arm and caught his hand. You trusted me to make my own choice. That's all I ever wanted. His fingers tightened around hers. Your choice almost got you killed. My choice saved my father, saved the family, and proved something I've been trying to tell you for years. What? That I'm stronger than you think. He looked at their joined hands. I know you are. I've always known. That's what terrifies me. Why? Because strong people don't need me, and I... He stopped, his jaw working. I need to be needed. Elena's heart clenched. Lucien, you were right. About everything. I've been keeping you at arm's length, treating you like something fragile, because if I didn't... He finally met her eyes. If I didn't, I'd have to face what I've been running from for 5 years. And what's that? That I love you. That I've loved you since you turned 18 and called me an arrogant bastard for telling you what to wear to your first family dinner. That every day since has been torture, watching you and knowing I couldn't have you. The words hung in the air between them. Elena felt tears sting her eyes. You're an idiot. He laughed, sharp and broken. I know. All this time I thought you didn't see me, didn't want me. I've never stopped seeing you, never stopped wanting you. I just convinced myself it was wrong. And now? Now you're lying in a hospital bed with a gunshot wound because of me. Because I didn't protect you well enough. Because I let my feelings cloud my judgment. Or, she said softly, I'm lying in a hospital bed because I made a choice. A brave, possibly stupid choice, but mine. And I'd make it again. He stared at her. You're impossible. I'm a Varelli. We don't do easy. Something shifted in his expression, something warm and dangerous, and entirely focused on her. No, you don't. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. His lips brushed hers, gentle at first, testing, then deeper, more desperate, like he was trying to pour 5 years of longing into a single kiss. Elena kissed him back with everything she had, ignoring the pain in her shoulder, ignoring the beeping monitors, ignoring everything except the feeling of his mouth on hers and the knowledge that this, finally, was real. When they broke apart, they were both breathing hard. I love you, she said, in case that wasn't clear. It was clear. He rested his forehead against hers. But I like hearing it anyway. Good, because I'm going to say it a lot. Elena, and I'm not leaving. I'm not running. I'm staying, and I'm going to be part of this family, the real family, not the protected, sheltered version. I'm going to learn the business, take on responsibilities, and make my own decisions. And you're going to let me. His expression turned wary. That's not... Yes, it is. Because if you love me, if you really love me, you'll trust me enough to let me stand beside you, not behind you, beside you. She could see him struggling, could see the protective instinct warring with the respect she'd earned. Finally, he exhaled slowly. This is going to be complicated. Everything worth having is complicated. You could still get hurt. So could you. That's the risk we take. You're not going to back down on this, are you? Not a chance. He studied her for a long moment. Then, slowly, a real smile, rare and devastating, crossed his face. Okay. Okay? Okay. We do this your way. Partners. Equals. But I reserve the right to be overprotective and possessive and generally insufferable about your safety. I can live with that, and I'm going to teach you everything. No more secrets, no more locked doors. You want in? You're in, all the way. Elena's heart soared. Really? Really, though you might regret it. This life, our life, it's not pretty. I know, I've seen it, I've lived it, and I'm still here. He kissed her again, softer this time. Yes, yes you are. The door opened and they broke apart quickly. Elena's father stood in the doorway, looking between them with an expression that was hard to read. Dad? Elena started. Lucien. Her father's voice was carefully neutral. Could you give us a moment? Lucien stood, squeezing Elena's hand once before leaving. The door clicked shut behind him. Dominic Varelli approached the bed slowly. How are you feeling? Sore, but alive. Thanks to Lucien. Thanks to a lot of people. Her father sat in the chair Lucien had vacated. I owe you an apology. Elena blinked. What? For the engagement. For trying to arrange your life without consulting you. For treating you like a bargaining chip instead of my daughter. He looked older in the harsh hospital light, tired. I thought I was protecting you, keeping you safe. But all I did was push you toward danger. You were doing what you thought was right. That doesn't make it acceptable. He reached out and took her hand. Your mother would be ashamed of me. She always said you had her fire, her strength. I should have listened. Tears pricked Elena's eyes. I barely remember her. She was extraordinary, brilliant, fearless, and completely unwilling to be told what to do. You're exactly like her. He smiled faintly, which terrifies me, by the way. Dad, let me finish. I've been blind. To what you're capable of, to what you want, to... He gestured vaguely in the direction Lucien had gone, to what's been happening right under my nose. But I'm not blind anymore. And if this is what you want, if he's what you want, then I won't stand in your way. What about the business, the family? The family will adapt. They always do. And as for the business, his expression turned calculating. I think it's time we started training the next generation properly. No more keeping you in the dark. No more protection through ignorance. Elena felt hope bloom in her chest. You mean it? I mean it. Starting tomorrow. Well, starting when you're healed, you're going to learn everything. The books, the contacts, the operations, all of it. And Lucy, and her father's expression turned stern. If he hurts you, I'll kill him myself. Dad, I'm serious. I don't care that he's family. I don't care that he's the heir. You're my daughter, and you come first, always. The fierce protectiveness in his voice made her chest ache. I know, and I love you for it. But you don't have to worry. Lucien would die before he hurt me. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. He stood, leaning down to kiss her forehead. Get some rest. We'll talk more tomorrow. He left, and Elena was alone with her thoughts. The room was quiet except for the beeping monitors and the distant sounds of the hospital. She looked out the window at the city skyline, thinking about everything that had changed in the last 24 hours. She'd planned to run, to escape this life, this family, this world of violence and power. Instead, she'd run toward it. And somehow, against all odds, she'd found exactly what she'd been looking for. Not freedom from the darkness, but someone willing to stand in it with her. Someone who saw her strength and didn't try to diminish it. Someone who loved her enough to let her choose her own path, even when that path led straight into danger. The door opened again. Lucien slipped inside, carrying 2 cups of terrible hospital coffee. Your father's blessing? She asked. more like a death threat disguised as permission. He handed her a cup. But I'll take it. What happens now? Now? He settled into the chair, his eyes finding hers. Now we rebuild. We clean up Romano's mess, shore up our alliances, and make sure everyone knows the Varelli family is stronger than ever. And us? Us. He said the word like he was testing it, tasting it. We figure it out as we go, together. No more running? No more running. Elena smiled, feeling lighter than she had in years. Good, because I'm exactly where I want to be. Lucian leaned in, his lips brushing her temple. So am I. Outside, the city continued its endless pulse, dangerous, beautiful, and full of possibility. And inside a hospital room high above it all, two people who'd spent years circling each other finally stopped running and started building something new, something that looked a lot like love. 3 days after the shooting, Elena sat in the back of a bulletproof town car, watching the city blur past her window. Her shoulder ached despite the painkillers, and the sling felt like a target painted on her chest. But she'd refused to stay in the hospital any longer, and Lucien had stopped arguing after the second day. He sat beside her now, his hand resting on her knee in a gesture that was becoming familiar. Possessive, but not controlling, a reminder that he was there. You don't have to do this today, he said quietly. We can wait until you're stronger. I'm strong enough. Elena turned to meet his eyes. And the longer we wait, the more time people have to question what happened, to create their own narratives. Let them question. You don't mean that. He didn't. They both knew perception was everything in their world. The attack at the engagement party had shaken the entire criminal infrastructure of the city. 3 families had lost members, millions in damage had been done, and Adrian Cole's betrayal, along with Romano's conspiracy, had exposed vulnerabilities no one wanted to acknowledge. The Varelli family needed to project strength, unity, and that meant Elena standing beside Lucien at the emergency council meeting, bullet wound and all. The car pulled up to a nondescript building in the industrial district. No signs, no identifying marks, just brick and barred windows, and the kind of anonymity that came with serious money and serious secrets. Marco waited at the entrance, flanked by 4 armed guards. His expression was grim. They're all here, he said as Elena and Lucien approached. And they're not happy. Good, Lucien replied. Happy people don't take threats seriously. Inside, the building opened into a surprisingly elegant conference room, mahogany table, leather chairs, and enough tension to choke on. 8 families were represented, their leaders positioned around the table like chess pieces. Elena recognized most of them, the Castellanos, the Morettis, the Santos family from the south side. The empty chair at the head of the table belonged to Romano, and no one had touched it. A message. Dominic Varelli stood when they entered. He looked better than he had in the hospital, his suit immaculate and the cut above his eye healing cleanly. But there was something different in his bearing now, something that suggested he was ready to step back. My daughter, he said, gesturing to Elena. And Lucien, who needs no introduction. The room's energy shifted. Elena felt eyes on her, assessing, calculating, some sympathetic and others coldly analytical. She was used to being looked at, but this was different. This was being measured. She shouldn't be here, Carlo Moretti said flatly. He was old guard, pushing 70, with the kind of traditional views that made Elena's skin crawl. This is family business. She is family, Dominic replied. She's a woman, and she's injured. This is no place for... Careful, Carlo. Lucien's voice cut through the room like a blade. Finish that sentence, and we'll have a problem. Moretti's jaw tightened, but he subsided. The others watched with interest. This was theater, Elena realized. Everything here was performance and positioning. She pulled out a chair and sat, ignoring the way her shoulder protested. Lucien remained standing behind her, his hand resting on the back of her chair. Let's begin, Dominic said. We all know why we're here. The attack 3 nights ago was unprecedented, bold, and nearly successful. Nearly being the operative word, Santos interjected. He was younger than most of the others, maybe 40, with the kind of polish that came from private schools and Ivy League degrees. Thanks to quick thinking and apparently a very brave young woman, his eyes found Elena's, and she saw genuine respect there. It surprised her. Bravery or stupidity, Castellano muttered, walking into that room unarmed. I wasn't unarmed, Elena said quietly. The table went silent. All eyes turned to her. I wore a vest. I had contingencies, and I knew exactly what I was doing when I offered myself as trade. She met Castellano's skeptical gaze without flinching. Adrian Cole was unraveling. He was emotional, desperate, and no longer following Romano's script. That made him predictable. And predictable enemies are easier to manage than rational ones. You manipulated him, Santos said, and it wasn't quite a question. I used what I knew about him, his ego, his obsession, his need to believe he was saving me from myself. Yes, I manipulated him, and it worked. Moretti shook his head. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Women getting involved in operations, making decisions based on emotions. I'm sorry, Elena interrupted, her voice sharp. Which one of us was emotional? Me, walking calmly into a hostage situation with a plan? Or Adrian, who threw away a perfectly good ambush because his feelings got hurt? Someone snorted. Elena thought it might have been Santos. The point, Dominic said, redirecting before Moretti could respond, is that we survived. Romano's coup failed, but the damage is done. We have bodies to explain, property to rebuild, and trust to restore. Trust, Castellano repeated bitterly. How do we trust anyone after this? Romano sat at this table for 20 years. 20 years, and we never suspected. Because he was patient, Lucian said. He played the long game, building relationships, establishing himself as reliable. Then he waited for the perfect opportunity, an engagement announcement that would give him legitimate claim to our holdings if something happened to Dominic. And the coal boy? Santos asked. A useful tool. Someone with access to Elena, to the family's routines. Someone expendable. Lucien's hand tightened slightly on Elena's chair. Romano fed him just enough information to make him feel important while keeping him ignorant of the real plan. When everything went wrong, Cole would take the blame and Romano would emerge as the tragic victim. Except it didn't go wrong for Cole, Moretti pointed out. It went wrong for Romano, because of her. He nodded at Elena, and the gesture was almost grudging respect. The question now, Dominic said, is what we do about the power vacuum. Romano's family is in disarray. His son, the one Elena was supposed to marry, has disappeared. Their territories are vulnerable. The energy in the room shifted again, sharpening into something predatory. This was what they'd really come for. Not solidarity or justice, but opportunity. The East Docks, Castellano said immediately. Romano controlled the shipping routes. Without him, they're open. The ports maybe, Santos countered. But the political connections? Those belong to whoever can maintain Romano's relationships with the city officials. Assuming those officials want to maintain relationships with us, Moretti added. This attack made the news. Not details, but enough. Police are asking questions. The mayor's office is making noise about organized crime crackdowns. Let them make noise, Lucian said. They've been on Romano's payroll for years. They're not going to bite the hand that feeds them just because the hand changed. You sound very confident about taking Romano's place, Santos observed. I'm confident about protecting what's ours. Whether that means expanding into Romano's territories or simply making sure no one else does. Lucian's expression was unreadable. The Varelli family has no interest in empire building, but we won't be pushed out either. Elena listened to them negotiate, watched the careful dance of power and positioning. These men had spent decades perfecting this game, learning when to push and when to yield. She'd spent her whole life watching from the sidelines, dismissed as irrelevant. Not anymore. There's another consideration, she said, and the table quieted again. Romano didn't work alone. He had inside information, security codes, patrol patterns, family schedules. Someone fed him that information. Cole? Moretti said immediately. Cole had access to me, not to operational details. He knew when I'd be home, what events I attended. But the attack happened during a shift change in security that only family would know about. The entry points they used required codes that get changed weekly. Adrian couldn't have provided that. Dominic's expression darkened. You think we have another traitor. I think we'd be stupid not to consider it. Silence fell. The implications settled over the room like a shroud. If Elena was right, if there was still a leak, then everyone at this table was suspect. That's a serious accusation, Castellano said carefully. It's a serious situation, Elena replied. I'm not accusing anyone specifically. I'm saying we need to be smart about how we move forward. Assume our information is compromised until we can prove otherwise. Santos leaned back in his chair, studying her with open curiosity. You've thought about this. I've had 3 days in a hospital bed with nothing to do but think. And what else did you think about? Elena glanced at Lucien, who gave her an almost imperceptible nod. Permission, or maybe trust. I think we're approaching this wrong, she said. We're treating Romano's betrayal as an isolated incident, one bad actor, one conspiracy. But what if it's not? What if this is part of a larger pattern? What pattern? Dominic asked. The old ways are dying. The traditional power structures, the family loyalties, the unwritten rules, they're not holding anymore. People like Romano see that. So do outsiders like Adrian, who think they can manipulate their way in. And if we don't adapt, if we keep operating like it's still 1985, we're going to get picked apart piece by piece. Moretti scoffed. This is exactly the kind of progressive nonsense I was worried about. The old ways worked for 50 years. The old ways got my father kidnapped and me shot, Elena said flatly. I'm not suggesting we abandon everything. I'm suggesting we evolve, tighten our security, modernize our information networks, and stop pretending that loyalty alone is enough to protect us. And who would lead this evolution? Santos asked. You? The question hung in the air, loaded with implications. Elena felt Lucien tense behind her. No, she said. My father leads this family. Lucien will succeed him when the time comes. But I can help. I have skills, perspectives, connections that could be useful. If you'll let me. If we'll let you, Castellano repeated. You make it sound like we have a choice. You do. You can dismiss me as Dominic's daughter playing at business. You can treat me like Romano tried to, as a commodity to be traded. Or you can recognize that I've proven myself and use that to your advantage. She met each of their eyes in turn. Your choice. The silence stretched. Elena could hear her own heartbeat, could feel Lucien's hand hovering near her shoulder like he wanted to touch her, but knew better than to make the gesture in front of these men. Finally, Santos laughed. It was unexpected and genuine, breaking the tension like a stone through glass. I like her, he said. She's got spine, and she's right. We've been operating on momentum and tradition for too long. Maybe it's time we tried something different. This is insanity, Moretti protested. This is survival, Santos corrected. The world is changing whether we like it or not. We either change with it or become irrelevant. He turned to Dominic. If your daughter wants a seat at the table, I say we give her one. Provisionally. Let her prove herself. Prove herself how? Castellano demanded. The mole, Lucien said. Elena identifies Romano's remaining contact inside the organization, and she earns her place. Elena's stomach dropped. That wasn't what she'd been suggesting, and from the sharp look Lucien gave her, he knew it. But he was playing a different game now, using her proposal to serve his own agenda. She wanted to argue, wanted to tell him not to make decisions for her, not to put conditions on her involvement. But this wasn't the place. So she held her tongue and watched the others consider. 1 month, Dominic said. You have 1 month to find the leak. If you succeed, you join the council officially. If you fail, I won't fail, Elena said, with more confidence than she felt. Then we have an agreement. Dominic looked around the table. All in favor? The vote was split but passed. Moretti abstained, Castellano voted against, but the others supported it. Barely. Elena had her chance. The meeting continued for another hour, dividing up Romano's territories and establishing new security protocols. Elena contributed where she could, keeping her suggestions measured and her tone collaborative. These men needed to see her as an asset, not a threat. When it finally ended, she was exhausted. The painkillers were wearing off and her shoulder throbbed with every breath. Lucien noticed immediately. "We're leaving," he said, cutting off Castellano mid-sentence. "But we haven't finished discussing the Port Authority. Marco will handle it. Elena needs rest." He didn't wait for agreement. He simply guided her toward the exit, his hand on her lower back, and dared anyone to object. No one did. In the car, Elena leaned her head back and closed her eyes. "That was stupid," she said. "Which part?" "The mole. Making it my test. If I fail, you won't." "You don't know that." "Yes, I do." He shifted closer, and she felt his hand find hers. "You're the smartest person in that room, smarter than all of them combined. If there's a leak, you'll find it. And if I don't, then we'll deal with it, together." Elena opened her eyes and looked at him. "You manipulated that vote. I gave you what you wanted, a real role, real responsibility, with impossible conditions attached. Nothing about you is impossible, Elena. That's the problem." His expression was rueful. "You asked to be taken seriously. This is what that looks like. High stakes, high pressure, and no safety net." "I know. She stopped, searching for the right words. "I thought I'd have more time to prepare." "You've been preparing your whole life. You just didn't know it." He leaned in, his voice dropping. "And you're not doing this alone. I'll help you. Marco will help you. Hell, even your father will help you, but the credit has to be yours." "Why?" "Because that's the only way they'll respect you. If I hand you the answer, you're still just the protected daughter. But if you earn it yourself," he smiled slightly, "then you become dangerous." The car pulled up to the Virelli mansion. Elena had expected to go back to her apartment, but Lucien had insisted she stay at the main house until she healed. "For security," he'd said. Though they both knew it was more than that. Inside, the repairs from the attack were already underway. New carpet in the ballroom, fresh paint on the walls, and crews working around the clock to erase the evidence. By next week, it would look like nothing had happened. But Elena would remember. The broken glass, the gunfire, the moment Adrian's finger tightened on the trigger. Those memories weren't going anywhere. Her father met them in the foyer. How did it go? "She has 1 month to find Romano's contact," Lucian said. Dominic's expression tightened. "That wasn't the plan. Plans change. She agreed to it." "Did she have a choice?" "I always have a choice," Elena interrupted before they could argue about her like she wasn't standing right there. "And I made mine. I'm going to find the leak, prove myself, and earn my place." End of discussion. Both men looked at her. Then Dominic smiled, small, proud, and a little sad. "You really are your mother's daughter." "So I keep hearing." Elena headed for the stairs, suddenly desperate to be alone. "I'm going to rest. Don't wait up." She made it to her room, the same room she'd grown up in, though it felt different now, and collapsed onto the bed. The shoulder screamed in protest, but she ignored it. She had bigger problems. 1 month. 30 days to identify a traitor who'd been smart enough to avoid detection for months, possibly years. Someone with deep access to family operations and the trust of people like her father and Marco. It felt impossible. A knock on the door interrupted her spiral. "Come in." Lucien entered, carrying a tray with soup and bread. "You need to eat." "I'm not hungry." "Eat anyway, doctor's orders." "You're not a doctor." "No, but I bribed yours to give me a list of instructions. Eat regularly, take your medication, and don't stress the shoulder. I'm following orders." Despite herself, Elena smiled. "You bribed my doctor?" "I prefer the term financially incentivized. Sounds less criminal." He set the tray on her bedside table and sat on the edge of the bed. "Talk to me." "About what?" "About why you're staring at the ceiling like it personally wronged you." Elena sighed. "I'm in over my head. Welcome to the family business." "That's not helpful." "It's honest." He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Everyone feels like this at first. The difference is most people get trained gradually, over years. You're getting thrown into the deep end. Because you threw me there. Because you jumped. I just made sure everyone saw you do it." His expression turned serious. "Do you regret it?" "Did she?" Elena considered the question honestly. 3 days ago, she'd been lying in a hospital bed, thinking her life was finally about to start, that she'd have Lucien, have a real role in the family, have everything she'd wanted, but wanting something and having the reality of it were different things. No, she said finally. I don't regret it. I'm just scared. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. Is that your philosophy? Stay scared and stay alive? It's worked so far. He stood, heading for the door. Get some rest. We'll start working on the mole problem tomorrow. Lucien? He paused, hand on the doorknob. Thank you for believing I can do this. His expression softened. I've always believed in you, Elena. I just needed you to believe in yourself. He left, and Elena was alone with her thoughts and her soup. She ate mechanically, her mind already working through the problem. Romano's contact, someone with deep access, someone trusted. The obvious suspects were the inner circle, Marco, the senior guards, her father's advisors. But if it were that obvious, they would have been caught already, which meant the mole was either incredibly good at hiding or positioned somewhere unexpected. Elena pulled out her phone and started making notes. Names, access levels, who knew what when. The attack had required detailed information about security rotations, family schedules, and building layouts. That narrowed it somewhat, but not enough. She worked until her eyes burned and her shoulder ached so badly that even breathing hurt. Then she took her medication, set an alarm for tomorrow, and tried to sleep. Her dreams were fragmented and violent. Adrian's face twisted in rage, the gun pointing at her father. Lucien's expression when the bullet hit, like his entire world had shattered. She woke gasping, sweat-soaked and disoriented. The clock read 3 a.m. She'd been asleep for maybe 2 hours. Getting up was a mistake, but staying in bed felt worse. Elena wrapped a robe around herself and padded barefoot through the dark mansion. Most of the staff were asleep, and the guards changed shifts at 4, which meant the house was as quiet as it ever got. She found herself in her father's study without really meaning to. The door was unlocked, unusual, and light spilled from under the frame. Elena pushed it open carefully. Dominic sat behind his desk, surrounded by papers and ledgers. He looked up when she entered, his expression shifting from concentration to concern. "Can't sleep?" he asked. "Bad dreams. You?" "Bad memories." He gestured to the papers. "Romano and I started together. Did you know that? 30 years ago, we were just 2 kids trying to make a name for ourselves." Elena settled into the chair across from him. "What happened?" "Life. Choices. He wanted power more than he wanted loyalty, and I wanted to build something lasting." Dominic picked up a photograph from the desk, him and Romano, decades younger, smiling at the camera. "I should have seen it. The signs were there. You can't blame yourself for trusting someone. Can I? I'm the head of this family. Protecting everyone is my job. And I failed." He set the photo down. "Your mother would have spotted it. She always saw through people's masks." "Tell me about her," Elena said quietly. "You never talk about her." Dominic was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rougher. She was fire and ice, brilliant, ruthless when she needed to be, and completely fearless. She could walk into a room full of dangerous men and own them within minutes. "Sounds familiar." He smiled faintly. "Yes. You're very much like her. It terrifies me, honestly." "Why?" "Because she died doing exactly what you're doing now, proving herself, taking risks, refusing to be protected." His eyes met hers. "She was investigating a rival family, gathering evidence of their operations. I told her it was too dangerous, that we should wait. She went anyway." Elena's chest tightened. She'd known her mother died in a car accident, but she'd never heard the full story. "What happened?" "They found out, rigged her car. She and your father, your biological father, were killed instantly." He looked away. "I took you in because your mother was my sister, and because letting you disappear into foster care felt like losing her all over again." The pieces clicked into place. "You've been trying to protect me because you couldn't protect her." "Yes." "Dad, I know. I know it's not fair to you, and I know I've been holding you back. But watching you walk into that ballroom knowing you could die—" His voice cracked. It was like losing her again. Elena stood and moved around the desk, wrapping her good arm around her father's shoulders. He pulled her close, careful of her injury, and she felt him shake slightly. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "For everything, for the engagement, for trying to control your life, for not seeing what was right in front of me. You were protecting me the only way you knew how. It was the wrong way. Maybe, but I'm still here, and I'm not going anywhere." They stayed like that for several minutes, finding comfort in the shared grief and the shared determination. When Elena finally pulled back, her father looked older but somehow lighter. "This thing with Lucien," he said carefully. "Are you sure?" "Yes." "He's not an easy man to love." "I know, but I don't want easy. I want real." Dominic studied her face, then nodded slowly. "Your mother said the same thing about your father. She chose him knowing exactly what his life was, what it would cost her, and she never regretted it. Even at the end? Especially at the end. She died doing what she believed in, with the person she loved. There are worse ways to go." Elena wasn't sure she agreed, but she understood the sentiment. "I'm going to find Romano's contact, not because I have to prove myself, but because it's the right thing to do. For you, for the family, for everyone who died in that attack. I know you will, and when you do—" He smiled slightly. "Try not to get shot again. My heart can't take it." "I'll do my best." She left him to his memories and his paperwork, feeling steadier than she had in days. The task ahead was still daunting, but she wasn't facing it alone. Back in her room, she found Lucien waiting in the hallway. "Couldn't sleep either?" she asked. "I don't sleep much. Occupational hazard." He looked her over. "You okay?" "Getting there. My dad and I talked." "About?" "My mother, his regrets, the usual heavy family drama." She unlocked her door. "Want to come in?" He hesitated. "Elena, I'm not asking you to sleep with me. I'm asking you to sit with me while I work through this mess. There's a difference." After a moment, he followed her inside. Elena grabbed her notes and laptop, settling onto the bed with everything spread around her. Lucien pulled up a chair, watching as she worked. "Talk it through," he said. "Sometimes saying it out loud helps." Romano needed detailed information about our security, shift times, entry codes, building layouts. That information exists in exactly 3 places: the security office, your files, and my father's private records. Marco controls the security office. I control my files. Your father's records are locked in a safe only he can access, which means either the mole is Marco, you, my father, or someone who has access to one of those 3 sources. Marco's been with us for 15 years. I trust him with my life, have trusted him with my life. And my father's above suspicion for obvious reasons, which leaves you. Elena looked up. "And before you get defensive, I'm not actually suggesting you're the mole. I'm saying we're missing something." Lucien leaned back, thinking, what if the information didn't come from any of those sources directly? What do you mean? What if someone didn't need access to the files because they had access to the people who use them? Listening devices, cameras, someone who could observe without being noticed. Elena's mind raced. The IT department. They install and maintain all our security systems, including the cameras and intercoms. And Romano recently insisted on upgrading our entire network, said it was a gift, a gesture of goodwill between families. We let his people do the installation. When? 6 months ago. 6 months. Right around when Adrian started dating her, right around when Romano would have been finalizing his plans. We need to check every piece of equipment his people touched, Elena said. Cameras, computers, phones, everything. That's going to take time. And if the mole realizes we're looking, then we make them think we're looking somewhere else. Elena started typing, pulling up the family's org chart. We announce a security audit, standard procedure after an attack, but we focus publicly on the guards, the physical security, the obvious places. Meanwhile, we quietly audit the technical infrastructure. That could work, but we'd need someone we trust to do the technical audit. What about that consultant you used last year? The one who helped with the warehouse security? Lucien's expression shifted. Chen. He's good, discreet, and has no loyalty to anyone but whoever's paying him. But bringing in an outsider is exactly what we need. Someone who has no history with the family, no allegiances that might be compromised. Elena met his eyes. Do you trust him? As much as I trust anyone. Then call him tomorrow. Tell him it's urgent and he's getting paid double, triple. Chen doesn't get out of bed for less than triple on rush jobs. Fine. Whatever it takes. Elena saved her notes and closed the laptop. Her shoulder was screaming now, the painkillers long since worn off. We have a plan. That's something. Lucienne stood, moving to the bedside. Take your medication. Yes, doctor. I'm serious, Elena. You're no good to anyone if you're in pain. She took the pills, washing them down with water. Lucian watched until he was satisfied, then headed for the door. Stay, Elena said before she could stop herself. He froze. Elena, I'm not asking for anything except your presence. I sleep better when you're near. She felt heat rise in her cheeks. Is that pathetic? No. He turned back, his expression unreadable. It's honest. He kicked off his shoes and stretched out on top of the covers, careful to stay on his side of the bed. Elena curled on her good side, facing him. Tell me something, she said quietly. Something I don't know about you. Like what? Anything. Something real. He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, I have nightmares, most nights, about the people I've killed, the things I've done. Sometimes I see their faces so clearly, I think they're actually there. Elena's heart clenched. How do you deal with it? I remind myself that I did what I had to do, that every choice was made to protect something worth protecting, and that regret is a luxury I can't afford. His eyes found hers in the darkness. But it doesn't make the faces go away. I'm sorry. Don't be. I chose this life. I knew what it would cost. He reached out, his fingers barely brushing hers. But lately, I've been wondering if maybe the cost was too high. If maybe I gave up too much trying to be what everyone needed me to be. And what do you need? I don't know anymore. For the longest time, I needed control, order, everything in its place following the rules I set. But then he stopped. You made me want something different, something I didn't think I could have. What? A life that's mine, not my father's legacy or the family's expectations, just mine. With someone who sees me, really sees me, and doesn't run. Elena laced her fingers through his. I'm not running. I know, that's what scares me. They lay there in the darkness, hands linked, breathing in sync. Eventually, Elena felt sleep pulling at her, the painkillers and exhaustion finally winning. The last thing she remembered was Lucian's thumb tracing circles on her wrist, and his voice barely a whisper. I won't let anything happen to you. She wanted to tell him that she could take care of herself, that she didn't need protecting, but the words wouldn't come, and the darkness was warm and safe, and she let herself fall. Chen arrived 2 days later, a wiry man in his 40s with wire-rimmed glasses and the kind of forgettable face that made him perfect for his line of work. He carried 3 aluminum cases and an expression that suggested he'd seen worse than whatever the Varellis could throw at him. Elena met him in the conference room with Lucien and Marco. Her shoulder was healing, the sling finally gone, but the stiffness remained, a constant reminder. You're the daughter, Chen said, not bothering with pleasantries. The one who got shot. That's me. Heard you walked into it on purpose, either very brave or very stupid. Little bit of both, Elena admitted. Thanks for coming on short notice. Triple rate buys a lot of short notice. He set the cases on the table and popped them open, revealing equipment Elena couldn't begin to identify. Lucian says you think you've got surveillance planted in your infrastructure. How certain are we talking? 90%, Lucian said. Romano's people did a full system upgrade 6 months ago, around the same time information started leaking. And you're just now checking? Chen shook his head. No offense, but your security is garbage. We trusted him, Marco said tightly. First mistake. Never trust anyone in this business. Chen pulled out what looked like a modified tablet. I'm going to need access to your entire network, every camera, every computer, every phone line, and I need to do it without anyone knowing what I'm looking for. The official story is a routine security audit after the attack, Elena said. You're checking for structural vulnerabilities, not technical ones. We've already announced it to the staff. Good, that gives me cover. Chen started assembling something that looked like a scanner. This is going to take time, days, maybe a week, and if I find what I think I'm going to find, you'll have some hard choices to make. Like what? Marco asked. Like whether you want to remove the surveillance and tip off whoever's watching, or leave it in place and feed false information. Both have advantages. Both have risks. Elena exchanged a look with Lu Shen. They hadn't discussed this possibility. What would you recommend? Depends on your goal. You want to find the mole? Leave it active and trace where the information's going. You want to secure your operations? Rip it out and salt the earth. Chen looked at each of them in turn. You can't do both. We need the mole, Elena said. The security we can fix later. Your funeral. Or not, hopefully. Chen grinned without humor. I'll start with the obvious places. Conference rooms, offices, anywhere sensitive conversations happen. Work my way out from there. I'll need a guide who won't ask questions. I'll do it, Marco offered. No offense, but you're too recognizable. I need someone who can blend in, look like they belong but won't draw attention. Chen's eyes landed on Elena. What about you? Me? You're the boss's daughter. You can go anywhere in this building and no one blinks. Plus, if anyone asks what we're doing, you can pull rank. Lucian's expression darkened. Absolutely not. Why not? Elena challenged. Because if whoever's watching realizes what you're doing, then they realize it regardless of who's helping Chen. At least this way, we control the narrative. She turned to Chen. When do we start? Now works. Grab a clipboard, look official, and try not to flinch when I start taking apart your walls. 2 hours later, Elena understood why Chen commanded triple rates. He worked with surgical precision, his scanner detecting anomalies in the electrical systems that would have been invisible to anyone else. They started in the main conference room where the council had met, and within 20 minutes, Chen had located 3 separate listening devices. Sophisticated, he murmured, examining one under a magnifying lens. Commercial grade, not spy store junk. Whoever installed these knew what they were doing. Can you trace where they're transmitting? Maybe. These models usually relay through a local receiver before going to the main collection point. Find the receiver. Find your mole. He carefully replaced the device exactly as he'd found it. We're leaving them active, right? Right. Then we need to be careful. Whoever's listening knows you had a security meeting in here 2 days ago. They probably heard every word. Elena's stomach dropped. The meeting where they'd discussed finding the mole, where they'd outlined their entire plan. So they know we're looking. If they were paying attention, yeah, which means we're on a clock now. Either they'll run or they'll try to cover their tracks. Chen moved to the next wall, scanning methodically. My advice? Act normal. Don't change your routines. Don't have any more secret meetings in surveilled rooms. Make them think you haven't figured it out yet. They worked through the afternoon, mapping the surveillance network. It was extensive, every major room in the mansion, several of the private offices, even some of the bedrooms. Elena felt violation crawl up her spine when Chen found a camera hidden in a smoke detector outside her room. Not inside, he said, reading her expression. Just the hallway. Monitoring who comes and goes. Small comfort. She thought about every conversation she'd had in that hallway, every moment she'd thought was private. How long had someone been watching? By evening, they'd covered the main floor and half of the second. Chen's equipment beeped steadily, marking each device on a digital map. The pattern was clear, concentrated around areas where family business was conducted, sparse in the living quarters. Professional job, Chen said as they took a break in an unsurveilled storage room. Someone knew exactly what they needed to monitor and where to put it. This wasn't a blanket approach. This was targeted intelligence gathering. How many devices total? Elena asked. So far, 23, and we're not done yet. He pulled up the map on his tablet, highlighting the clusters. See this? They're focused on information flow, conference rooms, offices, the security center. Whoever planned this wanted to know what you were planning before you did it. Can you tell how long they've been active? Not precisely, but based on the battery life of these models, I'd guess 6 to 8 months. Maybe longer if they're being replaced regularly. 6 to 8 months. Right in the window, Elena had calculated. And the receiver? That's the tricky part. These devices can transmit up to half a mile through walls and interference. The receiver could be anywhere within that radius, which includes about 50 buildings and several hundred people. Yeah, we need to narrow it down. Chen zoomed in on the map. The signal strength varies depending on location. The devices in the east wing are weaker, which suggests the receiver is west or central. If we can triangulate, the door opened. Lucien stepped in, his expression grim. We have a problem. Elena's pulse spiked. What kind of problem? The kind where someone just tried to kill Chen's assistant. Chen was on his feet immediately. David? Where is he? Hospital. He's alive, but it was close. Someone ran him off the road on his way here. Lucien's eyes found Elena's. Whoever's watching knows what we're doing, and they're not happy about it. The hospital waiting room smelled like antiseptic and fear. David Chen, no relation to his employer, just an unfortunate coincidence, had survived with a concussion and broken ribs. He'd also survived conscious enough to identify the vehicle that hit him. Black SUV. He told them from his hospital bed, his voice raspy. Professional job. They came up behind me at a red light, pushed me into the intersection. I swerved, hit a pole. They kept driving. Did you see the driver? Lucien asked. Tinted windows, but I got a partial plate. He rattled off 3 numbers and a letter. Marco, who'd joined them, was already on his phone. Running it now. Elena watched David, seeing the fear in his eyes despite his attempt at composure. Did anyone know you were coming here? Just Chen, and whoever you told, which was only Lucien and Marco. Elena's mind raced. Either the leak extended to people she absolutely trusted, or someone had been following David, watching Chen's operation, waiting for an opportunity. We're pulling you out, Chen said. This job isn't worth your life. The hell it's not. You're paying triple. David tried to sit up, winced. Besides, I'm not letting some corporate espionage reject scare me off. I'm a New Yorker. We don't run from traffic accidents. Despite everything, Elena smiled. You sure? I'm sure. Just get me a laptop and some pain meds. I can work from here. Marco's phone buzzed. He stepped into the hallway to take the call, returning minutes later with his jaw tight. The plate's registered to a company called Northside Logistics. Guess who owns it? Romano, Lucien said flatly. Romano's son, actually. Michael, the one who disappeared after his father's arrest. Elena's blood went cold. He's still in the city? Apparently. And apparently still very invested in finishing what his father started. Marco pulled up a photo on his phone. Michael Romano was younger than she'd expected, maybe 30, with his father's calculating eyes. He's been spotted twice in the last week, both times near locations connected to our family. He's cleaning up, Lucien said. Tying off loose ends before he runs for good. Or before he makes another move, Elena countered. His father failed, but the infrastructure's still there. The surveillance, the contacts, the plans. If Michael's smart, and he probably is, he'll use what his father built to try again. Then we need to find him before he gets the chance. Lucien turned to Chen. How fast can you finish the sweep? With David down, 2 more days minimum, maybe 3. You've got 1. After that, we're going dark, ripping out every device, changing every code, assuming everything's compromised. That'll tip them off. They're already tipped off. They tried to kill David. Subtlety is off the table. Chen didn't argue. He gathered his equipment, promised to have preliminary results by morning, and left with the kind of efficiency that came from working in war zones. In the hallway, Elena pulled Lucien aside. We need to talk about the plan. What about it? Chen finding the surveillance doesn't help us if we can't find Michael. He's the real threat. He knows everything his father knew, plus he's got nothing to lose. She kept her voice low. I think we should bait him out. Absolutely not. Hear me. I don't need to hear you. I already know what you're going to suggest, and the answer is no. Elena's temper flared. You don't even know what I was going to say. You were going to suggest using yourself as bait, again, because apparently getting shot once wasn't enough of a learning experience. It worked last time. You got lucky last time. Adrian was emotional, reckless. Michael Romano is neither of those things. He's calculated, patient, and he's already proven he'll kill to protect his operation. Which is exactly why it'll work. He sees me as unfinished business. The girl who ruined his father's plan, who cost him everything. If I make myself vulnerable, then he kills you, and I have to live with the fact that I let it happen. Lucien's voice was low, dangerous. No, find another way. There is no other way. We're running out of time, and he's in the wind. Either we draw him out, or we spend the next 6 months looking over our shoulders, waiting for him to strike. Then we spend 6 months looking over our shoulders. They stared at each other, neither willing to back down. Elena could see the fear beneath Lucien's anger, the bone-deep terror that he was trying to control. She understood it. Part of her even appreciated it, but she couldn't let it stop her. I'm doing this with or without your approval, she said quietly. You can help me do it safely, or you can watch me do it anyway and hope for the best. That's not fair. No, but it's honest. She touched his arm. I know you're scared. I'm scared too, but we both know this is the right move. Lucien closed his eyes, and for a moment he looked exhausted. I hate that you're right. Get used to it. I'm right a lot. Despite everything, he almost smiled. We do this carefully, controlled environment, backup at every exit, and you wear a vest. Obviously. And if anything, and I mean anything, feels wrong, you abort. No heroics, no improvising. Agreed. He pulled her close, his forehead resting against hers. If something happens to you, it won't. But if it does, then you'll do what you always do. You'll survive, you'll protect the family, and you'll make sure whoever's responsible pays. She pulled back to meet his eyes. But it's not going to come to that, because we're going to plan this perfectly, execute it flawlessly, and end this tonight. Tonight? Michael's already rattled. He tried to kill David in broad daylight, which means he's desperate. Desperate people make mistakes. We use that. Marco rejoined them. I've got people looking for Michael. So far, nothing. That's because he's waiting for an opportunity, Elena said. So we give him one. Somewhere public enough that he'll think he can disappear, but controlled enough that we can contain him. Like where? Marco asked. Elena thought fast, running through options. Somewhere Michael would believe she'd actually be, somewhere he could access without raising immediate suspicion. The memorial service. Both men stared at her. What memorial service? Lucien asked carefully. The one we're announcing today for the people who died in the attack. A public service held at the church on 7th. We announce that I'll be speaking, giving a eulogy. Michael sees it as the perfect opportunity. Emotional, distracted targets in a semi-public place with multiple exits. He'd never fall for it. He would if we make it believable. We leak the information through one of the surveilled rooms, make it look like we're trying to keep it quiet but failing. He hears about it, thinks he's got inside information, and makes his move. Marco was already nodding. We could secure the church, post people at every exit. He comes in, we close the trap. And if he brings backup, Lucien challenged, then we have backup too. But I'm betting he won't. He's trying to stay off the radar. Finish this quietly. A big operation draws attention he can't afford. Lucien ran his hand through his hair, a tell that he was actually considering it. This is insane. This is our best shot, Elena corrected, and we're taking it. The plan came together with brutal efficiency. Marco coordinated with the church, claiming they needed it for a family memorial. Chen planted a conversation in the main conference room, making sure it was picked up by the surveillance. Lucien arranged for 24 men to be positioned throughout the building, all armed, all with orders to take Michael alive if possible. Elena spent the afternoon preparing, which mostly meant convincing herself this wasn't the stupidest thing she'd ever done. The bulletproof vest helped. So did the small pistol Lucien insisted she carry, tucked against her ribs where it wouldn't show under her black dress. "You remember how to use it?" he asked, checking her stance for the third time. "Point. Shoot. Try not to hit anyone I like. I've got it." "Elena." She met his eyes. "I've been training for 6 months. I know what I'm doing." "I know you do. Doesn't make this easier." She touched his face, feeling the tension in his jaw. "After tonight, it's over. Michael's caught, the surveillance is gone, and we can actually breathe. And if it doesn't work, then we improvise, like we always do." She kissed him, quick and fierce. "Trust me." "I do. That's the problem." The church was small, old, and perfect for their purposes. A single main entrance, 2 side exits, and a balcony that overlooked the sanctuary. Marco's people were positioned at every point, invisible to casual observation, but ready to move. Elena stood at the front, facing rows of empty pews. The memorial service wouldn't happen for another hour, but they'd opened the doors early to give Michael time to scout. If he was coming, it would be soon. She felt exposed, standing there in her black dress with the vest pressing against her ribs. The gun was a small comfort, but it wouldn't help much if Michael came in shooting. "Anything?" she murmured into the microphone hidden in her collar. "Not yet." Lucien's voice came through the earpiece, steady and calm. He was positioned in the balcony with a clear line of sight to the entire sanctuary. "Stay alert." Minutes crawled past. Elena pretended to review her notes, actually scanning the room for movement. The stained glass windows cast colored shadows across the pews, making it hard to distinguish shapes. Then the main door opened. A man entered, mid-30s, dressed in a maintenance uniform. He carried a toolbox and moved with the kind of casual confidence that came from belonging. But Elena had studied Michael Romano's face for hours. She recognized him despite the disguise. "Target acquired," she breathed. "Main entrance. Maintenance uniform." "I see him. Hold position." Michael moved down the aisle slowly, his eyes sweeping the room. He was looking for threats, for the trap he had to know might be waiting, but he kept walking, kept closing the distance. Elena's heart hammered. 20 feet, 15, 10. "Miss Varelli?" Michael's voice was pleasant, professional. "I'm here to check the sound system. Father Matthews said there was an issue with the microphones." "Did he?" Elena's hand drifted toward her ribs, toward the gun. "That's strange. I didn't hear about any issues. Maybe he forgot to mention it. You know how he gets?" Michael set the toolbox down, and Elena heard the subtle click of latches opening. "I'll just take a quick look." "I don't think so." Michael's pleasant expression faded. "Sorry?" "I said, I don't think so, because you're not a maintenance worker, and we both know why you're really here." Elena drew the gun, keeping it low but visible. "Hello, Michael." For a second, nobody moved. Then Michael smiled, and it was his father's smile, cold and calculating. "Clever girl. Your father's daughter, after all." His hand slid into the toolbox. "But not clever enough." Everything happened at once. Michael pulled a gun, Elena dove behind the podium, and the sanctuary erupted in shouts. Lucian's voice in her ear, sharp and commanding. Footsteps thundering from every direction. Michael fired twice, both shots going wide. Elena returned fire from behind cover, aiming for center mass like she'd been trained. She didn't see if she hit him. She just kept shooting until the gun clicked empty. Then strong hands were pulling her up, pushing her toward the side exit. Marco's face, grim and focused. "Move! Move! Did we get him? He's down. Don't know if he's dead or just hit. Either way, we need to get you out." They burst through the side door into harsh sunlight. A car was waiting, engine running. Marco shoved her into the back seat and climbed in after her, and they were moving before the door closed. Elena's hands shook as adrenaline flooded her system. "Is Lucien?" "He's fine. He's with Michael. We'll rendezvous at the safe house." The safe house was a nondescript apartment in a building the family owned. Elena paced the living room while Marco made calls, trying to piece together what had happened. Her ears were still ringing from the gunfire, and her shoulder throbbed where she'd hit the floor. 30 minutes later, Lucien arrived. He had blood on his shirt. Not his, Elena noted with relief, and his expression was dark. "Michael?" she asked. "Alive. Shot in the shoulder and leg. He'll survive to stand trial. Lucian crossed to her, his hands framing her face. Are you hurt? No, shaken up, but fine. You shot him. I shot at him. I don't know if I actually hit. You hit him. Shoulder shot was yours. Clean through, just missed the artery. He kissed her hard, relief and anger tangled together. Don't ever do that again. Do what? Follow the plan we agreed on? Scare me like that. When he pulled that gun, Lucian's voice cracked. I thought I was going to watch you die. Elena wrapped her arms around him, feeling him shake slightly. I'm okay. We're okay. And it's over. Is it? Marco asked from the doorway. Because Michael's talking, and what he's saying is very interesting. They gathered around Marco's phone, listening to the audio recording. Michael's voice, strained with pain but still arrogant, confirming what they'd suspected. The surveillance had been his father's plan, but Michael had been the one maintaining it. He'd been feeding information to his father for months, preparing for the coup. But there was more. Michael named names, associates who'd helped, officials who'd looked the other way, and most damningly, the person inside the Varelli organization who'd provided the security codes. Elena's blood went cold when she heard the name. Thomas Reeves, Michael said on the recording. Head of IT. He installed everything, maintained the network, even helped us map the optimal placement. We paid him $200,000 up front, another $100,000 when the job was done. Reeves, the quiet, unremarkable man who'd worked for the family for 3 years, who had access to every system, every network, every piece of digital infrastructure they owned. I want him found, Lucian said, his voice ice. Now. Already on it, Marco replied. But he's in the wind. Hasn't been seen since yesterday. Then we find where he ran to and drag him back. Lucian turned to Elena. You did it. You found the mole. She had. The knowledge settled over her like a weight, satisfaction mixed with exhaustion. 1 month to find a traitor, and she'd done it in 3 weeks. What happens now? She asked. Now we clean house. Every system Reeves touched gets replaced, every code gets changed, every piece of equipment gets audited. Lucian pulled her close. And you get a seat at the table. No provisional status, no tests. You earned it. Elena leaned into him, feeling the last of the adrenaline drain away. What about Michael and his father? They'll face justice. Our kind of justice, not the legal system's. His expression was grim. The council will decide, but I'm guessing exile if they're lucky. Execution if they're not. And Reeves? Same. He betrayed the family. There's only one punishment for that. Elena knew she should feel something about that. Guilt, maybe, or moral conflict. But all she felt was tired relief. These people had tried to destroy her family, had nearly succeeded. Whatever happened to them now was consequence, not cruelty. I want to go home, she said quietly. Lucien nodded. Let's go home. The mansion felt different when they returned. Lighter, maybe, or just less oppressive. Chen had finished his sweep, cataloging every device and preparing to remove them. The staff moved through the halls with their usual efficiency, oblivious to how close everything had come to falling apart. In her room, Elena stripped off the dress and the vest, her muscles aching. The gun went back in its case, unloaded and secured. She stood in front of the mirror, cataloging the bruises from where she'd hit the floor, the fading scar from the bullet wound. She looked like she'd been through a war. In a way, she had. Lucian appeared in the doorway, having shed his bloody shirt. You should rest. I should, but I won't. She turned to face him. It's really over? The immediate threat? Yes. But there will be others. There always are. He crossed to her, his hand settling on her waist. This life doesn't get easier, Elena. It gets more complicated, more dangerous. Are you sure this is what you want? She thought about the question honestly. The fear, the violence, the constant calculation. A week ago, she'd been trying to escape it. Now she was choosing to dive deeper. I'm sure, she said, not because it's easy or safe, but because it's mine. My choice, my life. And because I have you. You have me, he agreed. For better or worse. Probably worse, given our track record. I'll take worse. Worse is interesting. He kissed her, slow and deep, and Elena felt something settle in her chest. This was right. Dangerous, complicated, probably destined for disaster at some point. But right. When they broke apart, Lucien rested his forehead against hers. The council meets tomorrow. They'll want a full report on Michael, the surveillance, all of it. You should be there. I will be. And after we figure out the rest, together. Together, he repeated, like he was testing the word. I like the sound of that, Elena smiled. Me too. Outside her window, the city continued its endless pulse. Somewhere out there, Thomas Reeves was running. Michael and his father were facing judgment, and the criminal underworld was recalibrating, adjusting to the new reality where Elena Varelli wasn't just a protected daughter, but a force in her own right. She'd proven herself, earned her place. And for the first time in her life, she felt like she belonged exactly where she was. In the darkness, building something new alongside the man she loved. It wasn't the escape she'd planned. It was something better. It was home. The council chamber felt different this time. Elena walked in without hesitation, without the tight knot of anxiety that had lived in her chest during the first meeting. Lucien walked beside her, not behind, and when she took her seat at the table, a real seat now, not a visitor's chair, no one objected. Dominic sat at the head, looking stronger than he had in weeks. The cut above his eye had healed to a thin scar, barely visible. Marco stood behind him, arms crossed, watching the room with the vigilance of a man who'd learned not to trust easily. The other families were represented again. Santos arrived first, nodding to Elena with what looked like genuine respect. Castellano came next, his expression sour but resigned. Even Moretti showed up, though he avoided looking directly at her. Let's begin, Dominic said once everyone had settled. We have much to discuss. The first hour was procedure. Updates on the Romano situation. Both father and son were being held in a secure location, awaiting the council's final judgment. Michael had provided extensive testimony in exchange for a lighter sentence, naming associates and revealing the full scope of his father's conspiracy. It was damning, comprehensive, and exactly what they needed to dismantle what remained of the Romano network. The question, Santos said, is what we do with their territories. The docks, the political connections, the infrastructure they built over 30 years. It doesn't just disappear. We divide it, Castellano said immediately, proportional to our losses during the attack. My family lost 2 men. That should count for something. Everyone lost something, Marco interjected. Counting bodies is a bad way to make decisions. Then how do you suggest we decide? Elena had been quiet, listening, cataloging the positions and the underlying motivations. Now she spoke. We don't divide it. We rebuild it. The table went silent. All eyes turned to her. Explain, Dominic said. Romano's network was powerful because it was integrated. The docks fed the distribution channels, which fed the political connections, which protected the docks. Break it into pieces, and you destroy the value. But keep it intact. Run it collectively. She let the implication hang. You're suggesting a partnership, Santos said slowly. Shared control over Romano's holdings. I'm suggesting we stop thinking like rival families competing for scraps and start thinking like a coalition. We're stronger together than apart. Romano proved that. He almost took us all down because we were too busy protecting our individual interests to see the bigger threat. Moretti scoffed. This is naive. Partnerships don't work in our world. Someone always gets greedy. Someone always betrays the others. Like Romano did? Elena met his eyes. You're right. Someone always gets greedy. But that's because we build systems that reward greed. What if we built something different? Clear agreements, transparent accounting, consequences for betrayal that everyone agrees to up front. You're describing a business, Castellano said, making it sound like an insult. I'm describing survival. The world is changing. Law enforcement is getting smarter. Technology is making it harder to operate in shadows. And every year there are more people like Romano who see opportunity in our conflicts. Elena leaned forward. We either adapt or we die. It's that simple. Santos was nodding. She's not wrong. I've been saying for years that the old model is unsustainable. Maybe it's time we actually did something about it. And you trust these people to honor an agreement? Moretti gestured around the table. Castellano would sell us out for the right price. The Varellis are only proposing this because it gives them control. The Varellis are proposing this because my daughter nearly died cleaning up Romano's mess. Dominic interrupted, his voice sharp. And because she's right. We've been operating on pride and tradition while the ground shifts under our feet. I'm tired of it. The room erupted in arguments. Castellano and Moretti talking over each other. Santos trying to mediate. Others jumping in with opinions and objections. Elena watched it unfold, saw the cracks in the foundation that Romano had exploited. These men didn't trust each other. They barely tolerated each other. And that weakness would kill them eventually. Lucian's hand found hers under the table. A reminder that she wasn't alone in this. Enough! Her father's voice cut through the chaos. We're not deciding this today. But we are going to seriously consider it. Elena will draft a proposal, structure, profit sharing, enforcement mechanisms, all of it. We'll reconvene in 2 weeks to review. 2 weeks? Moretti protested. That's not enough time. Then she'll work fast. Meeting adjourned. The families filed out, some still arguing, others already calculating angles. Santos paused by Elena's chair. That took guts. Proposing something that radical. Or stupidity, she said. There's a fine line. He smiled. For what it's worth, I think you're right. We do need to evolve. Question is whether these old dogs can learn new tricks. After he left, Elena sat in the empty chamber, feeling the weight of what she'd just committed to. A complete restructuring of how the families operated, built on trust that didn't exist, and cooperation that went against every instinct these men had. You know this is impossible, Lucian said. Probably. They'll fight you on every detail. Moretti will try to sabotage it, Castellano will negotiate in bad faith, and even the ones who agree in principle will balk at the reality. I know. So why propose it? Elena turned to face him. Because someone has to. Because doing the same thing over and over while expecting different results is insanity. And because... She stopped, searching for the right words. Because I want to build something that lasts. Not just survive until the next Romano comes along, but actually create something stable. Something better. Lucien studied her face for a long moment. You really believe that's possible? I have to. Otherwise, what's the point? He pulled her close, kissing her forehead. Then I'll help you try, even though we'll probably fail spectacularly. That's the spirit. Over the next week, Elena worked 18-hour days. She studied the Romano holdings in detail, mapped out the connections and dependencies, consulted with accountants and lawyers who specialized in exactly this kind of gray area business structure. Marco provided security assessments. Her father offered historical context. Even Santos sent over his own analysis, unprompted. Lucien was her constant, sitting with her through late nights, challenging her assumptions, making her defend every decision. It was exhausting and frustrating, and exactly what she needed. This profit-sharing formula is going to be a nightmare to enforce, he said, reviewing her latest draft. I know, but if we base it purely on contribution, Castellano will manipulate the numbers. And if we base it on equal shares, Moretti will claim he's subsidizing everyone else. So you're splitting the difference and hoping nobody hates it enough to walk away? Essentially, yes. Lucian set down the papers. It's good work, Elena. Really good. But you know they're going to tear it apart anyway. Let them. At least we'll have a starting point. The second council meeting was worse than the first. Moretti objected to the profit formula. Castellano wanted more control over enforcement. Santos supported the framework, but wanted modifications to the governance structure. And those were just the initial reactions. They argued for 3 hours, picking apart every clause, questioning every assumption. Elena defended her proposal, yielding on minor points while holding firm on the core principles. Lucien backed her up, his support implicit but unmistakable. Even her father weighed in, reminding the others that the alternative was continued vulnerability. This is all very idealistic, Moretti said, his voice dripping with condescension. But what happens when someone breaks the agreement? When one family decides their interests outweigh the collective good? Then we enforce the consequences. Together. Elena pulled out another document. I've outlined a dispute resolution process, neutral arbitration, escalating penalties, and in extreme cases, collective action against the violator. You mean we go to war with our own? I mean we hold each other accountable. Yes, it could mean conflict, but contained conflict with clear rules is better than the chaos we have now. And who decides what's extreme, says Castellano asked. Who gets to make that call? We all do. Majority vote of the council, with the accused family abstaining. No one person has that power. The questions continued, each one designed to find weaknesses. Elena answered them all, her confidence growing as the proposal held up under scrutiny. It wasn't perfect. Nothing involving this many competing interests could be. But it was solid. Finally, Dominic called for a vote. All in favor of adopting this framework on a trial basis? Santos raised his hand immediately. After a pause, 2 other families followed. Then another. Moretti and Castellano abstained, but they didn't vote against it. The motion passed. Elena felt something unclench in her chest. Not relief exactly, because the real work was just beginning, but validation. Proof that her ideas had merit, that she could contribute something beyond just surviving attacks and finding traitors. Congratulations, Santos said as the meeting broke up. You just reorganized the entire criminal infrastructure of the city. How does it feel? Terrifying, Elena admitted. Good. Stay terrified. It'll keep you sharp. That night, the family gathered for dinner. Not the formal affairs Elena had grown up with, but something smaller. Just her father, Lucien, Marco, and a few of the senior staff who'd become more like family than employees. To Elena, Dominic raised his glass, who accomplished in a month what the rest of us couldn't do in decades. I had help, she protested. You had resources. What you did with them was all you. He smiled, and it was warm and proud and everything she'd wanted from him for years. Your mother would be so proud. The words hit harder than Elena expected. She raised her own glass, blinking back unexpected tears. To family. The ones we're born into and the ones we choose. They drank, and Elena felt the weight of belonging. Not as someone to be protected or managed, but as an equal. Someone who'd earned her place through action, not birthright. Later, when most people had drifted away, Lucien found her on the balcony overlooking the gardens. The same balcony where she'd stood weeks ago, planning her escape. Thinking about running? He asked, reading her mind. No, just remembering when I wanted to. She leaned into him when he wrapped his arms around her waist. It feels like a lifetime ago. In a way, it was. You're different now. Is that good or bad? It's real. The Elena who wanted to run was scared, trapped, looking for an exit. This Elena, he turned her to face him. This Elena walks into rooms and changes them, stands up to men twice her age and makes them listen. Rebuilds power structures that have existed for generations. This Elena also gets shot and nearly dies on a regular basis. Well, nobody's perfect. He kissed her, slow and thorough. But you're perfect for me. Elena pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. What happens now? We've dealt with Romano, restructured the families, solved the immediate crises. What comes next? We build. We protect what we've created. We handle whatever threats emerge because there will always be threats. His expression turned serious. And we figure out what this is. Us. I thought we already figured that out. We figured out that we love each other, that we're partners. But there's more to decide, where we live, how we balance personal and professional, whether, he hesitated, whether what? Whether you want the same future I do. Elena's heart kicked up. And what future is that? One where you're not just my partner in business, where this, he gestured between them, becomes something permanent, official. She stared at him. Are you asking what I think you're asking? I'm asking if you'd consider it. Eventually, when things are more stable. He looked almost nervous, which was strange on a man who faced death with cold calculation. I know it's complicated, our world, the expectations, all of it, but I want you to know that's where I'm headed. So if that's not something you want, Elena kissed him, cutting off the spiral. Yes. Yes? Yes, I'd consider it. Yes, I want that future. Yes to all of it. She laughed at his stunned expression. Did you really think I'd say no? I thought you might want time, to be sure. Lucien, I've been sure about you since I was 18 years old. Everything else was just me waiting for you to catch up. He kissed her again, deeper this time, and Elena felt the last piece of her old life fall away. The girl who'd wanted to escape, who'd seen this world as a prison, she was gone. In her place was someone stronger, more certain, more herself than she'd ever been. The next morning, Elena woke to her phone buzzing. A text from an unknown number. We need to meet. Important information about Reeves. Come alone. Address attached. She stared at the message, every instinct screaming trap. Thomas Reeves had disappeared after Michael's arrest, vanishing into whatever hole people like him disappeared into. There'd been no trace, no leads, nothing. Until now. Elena should tell Lucien, should bring backup, should approach this carefully. But the address was a coffee shop in a busy part of town, public and relatively safe, and the message said to come alone. She made her decision. 40 minutes later, she walked into the coffee shop, scanning for threats. It was morning rush, packed with people getting their caffeine fix before work. No obvious danger, no one who looked out of place. Then she saw him. Thomas Reeves sat in the back corner, looking smaller than she remembered, pale, exhausted, with the haunted eyes of someone who knew he was living on borrowed time. Elena slid into the seat across from him. You have a lot of nerve contacting me. I know, but I had to. He pushed a flash drive across the table. Everything I did for Romano, everyone I worked with, all the systems I compromised. It's all here. Why? Because I'm dead either way. Romano's people will kill me for failing. Your people will kill me for betraying the family. At least this way, maybe I die having done one decent thing. Elena studied him, seeing genuine fear and regret. You took $200,000 to sell out people who trusted you. People died because of what you did. I know, His voice broke. I needed the money. Medical bills for my daughter. She's sick and the insurance wouldn't cover. He stopped, realizing how weak it sounded. There's no excuse, I know that. But I'm trying to make it right. By giving me a flash drive that's supposed to fix things? No, nothing fixes this, but maybe it helps prevent the next person from doing what I did. Maybe it protects the family better than I did. He stood up, leaving the flash drive on the table. I'm sorry, Miss Varelli. For whatever that's worth. He walked out before Elena could respond. She sat there, staring at the flash drive, weighing options. Chase after him? Call Lucien? Take the information and disappear? She picked up the flash drive and left. Back at the mansion, she plugged it into an isolated laptop, one not connected to any network. The files were extensive. Security diagrams, communication logs, financial records. Everything Reeves had said, and more. Information about other potential vulnerabilities, suggestions for improvements, even names of other IT professionals who might be targeted for recruitment. It was a confession and a blueprint all at once. You went alone! Lucien's voice came from the doorway, tight with controlled anger. After everything, you went to meet a known traitor alone. Elena had known this conversation was coming. It was a public place. Minimal risk. There's no such thing as minimal risk with someone who betrayed us once. He wanted to give us this. She gestured to the laptop. Intelligence we couldn't have gotten any other way. And yes, I took a calculated risk. That's part of the job now. The job doesn't require you to be reckless. I wasn't being reckless. I was being strategic. There's a difference. She stood, facing him. You're going to have to accept that I make my own decisions now, even ones you don't like. Even ones that put you in danger? Especially those, because that's what this life is. Danger, risk, impossible choices. You've been making them for years. Now I am too. Lucian ran his hand through his hair, frustrated. I just got you. I'm not ready to lose you. You're not losing me. You're accepting who I am, who I've become. She crossed to him, taking his hands. I need you to trust me the way I trust you, to believe that I can handle myself even when it scares you. It always scares me. Good. Stay scared. It'll keep you sharp. She smiled, echoing Santos's words. Now look at what Reeves gave us. It's actually impressive. They spent the next hour reviewing the files, cataloging the information. Reeves had been thorough, detailing not just what he'd done, but why each system was vulnerable and how to fix it. It was the work of someone genuinely trying to atone, even if atonement was impossible. What do we do about him? Elena asked finally. Reeves, I mean. He's out there, waiting for someone to kill him. What do you want to do? I don't know. He betrayed us. People died. By every measure, he deserves whatever punishment we'd give him. She stared at the screen, but he's also trying to make amends, and he gave us information that could save lives down the line. You're thinking of letting him live. I'm thinking we have other options besides death. Exile, maybe. Strip him of everything, make sure he can never work in this industry again, but let him live. With his daughter. Lucian considered it. The council would object. They'll want blood for blood. Then we don't tell them. We say he disappeared, presumed dead, and we leave it at that. That's mercy, Elena. This world doesn't reward mercy. Maybe it should start. She met his eyes. I'm not saying we forgive him. I'm saying we choose not to add another body to the pile, that we break the cycle, just this once. After a long moment, Lucian nodded. Okay, we do it your way. But if he ever surfaces again, if he ever poses a threat, then we handle it. But until then, he gets to live with what he did. That's punishment enough. They leaked word that Reeves had been found dead, body dumped in the river. The council accepted it without question, one more loose end tied off. And somewhere, Thomas Reeves disappeared into a new life, carrying the weight of his choices. Elena told herself it was the right call, that mercy was strength, not weakness. But late at night, she wondered if she'd made a mistake, if the man she'd let live would come back to haunt them. Only time would tell. The weeks that followed were a blur of meetings and negotiations. The new coalition framework was implemented in stages, with each family testing the waters, looking for advantages. There were disputes, moments of tension where everything threatened to collapse. But Elena mediated, pushed, and somehow held it together. The Romano territories were absorbed into collective management. Profits were distributed according to the formula Elena had designed. And slowly, grudgingly, the families began to function as something resembling a unified organization. You're actually pulling this off, Marco said one afternoon, reviewing the latest reports. I didn't think it was possible. It almost wasn't, still might not be. Elena rubbed her temples, exhausted. Castellano's already trying to renegotiate his share. Of course he is, but the fact that he's negotiating instead of just taking means the system's working. Small victories. Elena was learning to appreciate them. In the midst of all this, her relationship with Lucien deepened. They moved into a shared apartment, separate from the main mansion but still close enough for security. It was their space, their refuge from the constant demands of family business. They learned each other's rhythms. Elena discovered that Lucien was obsessive about coffee quality and terrible at cooking. He learned that she worked best in silence and had a collection of old books she'd never admitted to anyone. They fought about strategy, about risk, about the future. But they also laughed, planned, and built something that felt permanent. One night, lying in bed after a particularly brutal council session, Elena asked the question that had been bothering her. Do you think we're making a difference? Really? What do you mean? All of this, the coalition, the new structure, trying to build something better? Are we actually changing anything, or just rearranging deck chairs? Lucian was quiet for a moment. I think we're planting seeds, whether they grow into something better or just different. That's not something we'll know for years. That's not very reassuring. It's honest. He pulled her closer. But here's what I do know. Before you, this family was stagnant, surviving, but not growing. You have challenged every assumption, questioned every tradition, and forced us to evolve. That matters. Even if it fails? Even then. Because at least we tried. At least we didn't just accept that this is how things have to be. Elena thought about her mother who'd died trying to make things better, about her father who'd spent years protecting her instead of preparing her, about all the people who'd come before, fighting and dying in cycles that never seemed to end. Maybe they were breaking that cycle, or maybe they were just creating a new one. Either way, they were doing it together. "I love you," she said, the words still feeling new, despite how many times she'd said them. "I love you too, even when you're being reckless and giving me heart attacks. Especially then." He laughed, and Elena felt the tension drain from her shoulders. Tomorrow would bring more challenges, more impossible decisions, more people trying to undermine what they'd built. But tonight, in this moment, everything was exactly where it needed to be. She'd stopped running, stopped hiding from who she was and what she was capable of. And in embracing the darkness of her world, she'd found something unexpected: light, purpose, home. The empire they were building wasn't perfect. It was messy and dangerous, and held together by will as much as strategy. But it was theirs, and that made all the difference. 6 months after the coalition was established, Elena stood in front of a wall-sized map of the city, colored pins marking territories, operations, and partnerships. What had started as an experimental framework had evolved into something more substantial. Not perfect. There were still disputes, still moments when old grudges threatened everything, but functional, growing. "The Santos family wants to expand into the northern distribution routes," Marco said, reviewing the latest requests. "They're claiming population growth justifies additional territory." "What does the data say?" Elena asked, not looking away from the map. "They're not wrong. The northern suburbs have grown 30% in the last 2 years, but giving them that route puts them in direct competition with the Moretti warehouses. Then we don't give them the route. We give them a partnership with Moretti. Split the territory, split the profits, both families benefit from the growth." Marco made a note. "Moretti's going to hate that." "Moretti hates everything. He'll get over it." Elena finally turned from the map. "What else?" "The usual. Castellano's complaining about his profit share again, 2 families are disputing a boundary line, and there's been some chatter about new players trying to move in from the east." "New players as in competition, or new players as in threat?" "Too early to tell, but they're organized, well-funded, and asking questions about our operations." Elena's instincts prickled. 6 months of relative stability had made everyone comfortable, maybe too comfortable. "Put surveillance on them. I want to know who they are, who they're working with, and what they want before they become a problem." "Already on it. Lucien's handling it personally." Of course he was. Lucien had thrown himself into the security aspects of the coalition with the same intensity he brought to everything. Elena knew he was still processing the changes, still adjusting to a world where problems were solved through negotiation instead of violence. It wasn't easy for him. Some nights she'd wake to find him standing at the window, staring at the city like he was waiting for it to attack. But he was trying. They both were. "Anything else?" Elena asked. "Your father wants to see you, said it's important." Elena found Dominic in his study, surrounded by paperwork as usual. But something was different. He looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with lack of sleep. "You wanted to see me?" she said, settling into the chair across from him. "I've been thinking about succession," he said without preamble. Elena's stomach tightened. "Dad, let me finish. I'm not dying. I'm not sick. But I'm also not getting younger, and after Romano's attack, I've been forced to confront my own mortality." He set down the pen he'd been holding. "I built this family into what it is today. But what you've built in 6 months, the coalition, the partnerships, the new frameworks, that's something I could never have accomplished." "That's not true. You laid the groundwork. I laid the foundation of the old world. You're building something new, and I think it's time I stepped back and let you do it without me looking over your shoulder." The word settled over Elena like a weight. "You're retiring?" "Transitioning. I'll still be here, still available for advice and guidance, but the day-to-day operations, the strategic decisions, the future of this family, that should be in your hands and Lucien's. You've earned it." Elena felt emotion clog her throat. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll keep building. Say you'll make this mean something beyond just survival. Dominic smiled, and it was warm and sad and proud all at once. Your mother would be so proud of you. I wish she could see what you've become. Me too. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the weight of the past and the promise of the future hanging between them. Finally, Dominic stood and crossed to a safe hidden behind a painting. He pulled out a small wooden box and handed it to Elena. This was your mother's. She wanted you to have it when you were ready. Inside the box was a ring, simple, elegant, with a single diamond that caught the light. Elena recognized it from old photographs. Her mother had worn it every day. She told me once that this ring represented a choice, Dominic said quietly. She could have left this life, could have walked away from your father and everything that came with him. But she chose to stay, to fight, to build something worth dying for. He met Elena's eyes. You made the same choice, and I think she'd want you to have a reminder of that. Elena slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, like it had been waiting for her. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just promise me you'll be smarter than we were, that you'll build something that lasts beyond violence and fear. I promise. That evening, Elena found Lucien in their apartment reviewing surveillance footage. He looked up when she entered, his expression shifting from concentration to concern. You okay? Marco said your father wanted to see you. He's stepping back, transitioning control to us. Lucien went very still. When? Gradually over the next few months. He wants to make it official at the next council meeting. Elena crossed to him, showing him the ring. He gave me this. It was my mother's. Lucien took her hand, studying the ring. It suits you. My father said she chose this life, knowing what it would cost, knowing how dangerous it was. She chose it anyway because she believed it was worth fighting for. Elena met his eyes. I think about that a lot, about what's worth the cost. And I think we're building something that is not perfect, not safe, but meaningful. Something that might actually outlast us. She laced her fingers through his. My father also asked me a question. He wanted to know if we'd thought about making this us official. Lucien's expression shifted. Have we? You brought it up 6 months ago. Said you wanted a future where I was more than just your business partner. I remember. You said yes, eventually. I've been waiting for eventually. Elena felt her heart rate kick up. What if eventually is now? He stood slowly, his hands framing her face. Are you asking me, or am I asking you? Does it matter? Not even a little bit. He kissed her, soft and certain. Yes. To everything. To us. To forever. To building this life together. Even though it's going to be complicated and dangerous and probably insane. Especially because of that. I don't want easy, Elena. I want real. I want you. She pulled him closer, feeling the certainty of it settle in her bones. This was right. Scary and imperfect and absolutely right. They announced the engagement at the next council meeting. The response was mixed. Santos looked genuinely pleased, Moretti looked like he'd swallowed something bitter, and Castellano just shrugged like he'd seen it coming. But no one objected, which in their world counted as approval. This changes the power dynamic, Castellano pointed out. Varelli family gets stronger with you two leading together. It also stabilizes leadership, Santos countered. Clear succession, united front. That's good for all of us, as long as the power doesn't go to their heads. It won't, Elena said firmly, because we're not interested in empire building. We're interested in sustainability, in creating something that works for everyone, not just us. The conversation shifted to business. The new players from the East, territorial disputes, profit distributions. Elena and Lucien worked in tandem, fielding questions and mediating conflicts. They developed a rhythm over the months, knowing when to push and when to yield, when to present a united front, and when to offer different perspectives. It wasn't always smooth. They still fought, still disagreed on strategy and approach, but they'd learned to argue productively, to challenge each other without undermining each other. After the meeting, As people filtered out, Santos pulled Elena aside. A word? They stepped into a quiet corner. Santos looked uncharacteristically serious. I wanted to warn you about something, he said quietly. Those new players from the East? I've been doing some digging. They're backed by foreign money, Eastern European, Russian connections. They're not just competition. They're a potential invasion force. Elena's stomach dropped. How certain are you? Certain enough to be worried. They've been buying up properties, recruiting locals, establishing infrastructure. All the signs of a long-term operation. Santos met her eyes. Your coalition is impressive, Elena, but it's also made you a target. You've unified the families, created something valuable. There are people who see that as an opportunity. What do you recommend? Strengthen your external defenses. The coalition works for managing internal politics, but you need a unified military response for external threats, and you need it yesterday. Elena felt the familiar weight of impossible decisions settling on her shoulders. They'd spent 6 months building peace internally. Now they might have to prepare for war externally. Thank you for the warning, she said. Thank you for listening. Some leaders wouldn't. Santos smiled slightly. You're good at this, you know. Better than most of us want to admit. That night, Elena briefed Lucien on Santos's warning. They sat at their dining table, the city lights glittering through the windows, mapping out defensive strategies. We need intelligence first, Lucien said. Confirm Santos's information, identify the players, understand their capabilities. Agreed, but we also need to prepare the other families. If this is real, we can't handle it alone. Some of them won't believe it. Moretti will think it's a power grab. Castellano will want proof before committing resources. Then we get proof. We document everything, build an airtight case, and present it to the council. Elena rubbed her temples. This is exactly what I was afraid of. We build something good, something stable, and the world tries to tear it down. That's always been the reality. The only difference is now we have something worth protecting. Lucien reached across the table, taking her hand. We'll handle this. Together. Over the next 3 weeks, they gathered intelligence. Lucien's people confirmed Santos's information. The Eastern organization was real, well-funded, and systematically establishing presence in the city. They weren't being subtle about it either, which suggested confidence or arrogance. Elena called an emergency council session. She laid out everything they'd learned, supported by documentation, surveillance footage, and financial records. The room went silent as the implications sank in. This is worse than Romano, Marco said flatly. Romano was internal betrayal. This is external invasion. What do they want? Castellano asked. Everything, Lucien replied. They want to replace us entirely, take over our operations, our territories, our connections. They see the coalition as weakness, too many voices, too much democracy. They think we're vulnerable. Are we? Moretti challenged. Only if we let ourselves be. Elena stood, moving to the map. The coalition was built for internal cooperation. Now we need to extend that to external defense. Shared intelligence, coordinated response, unified military action when necessary. You're talking about an army, Santos said. I'm talking about survival. These people aren't going to negotiate. They're going to push until we push back hard enough to make them stop. The debate lasted hours. Moretti worried about costs, Castellano about individual family autonomy, others about the logistics of coordinating military action across multiple organizations. But underneath the objections, Elena saw something else. Fear. Real fear that this thing they'd built together might not be enough. We have a choice, she said finally. We can fragment, try to handle this individually, and get picked off one by one. Or we can stand together, present a united front, and show these people that this city is not for sale. And if we lose? Moretti asked. Then we lose together, but at least we'll have fought for something worth fighting for. The vote was unanimous. For the first time in the coalition's history, all families agreed without reservation. They would coordinate defense, pool resources, and face the threat together. The preparation was intense. Intelligence networks expanded, security protocols tightened, and every family contributed personnel and resources to a coordinated defense strategy. Elena found herself working 20-hour days, coordinating between families, managing logistics, and trying to stay 3 steps ahead of an enemy that seemed to know their every move. They have inside information, she told Lucian one night, frustrated. Every time we move assets, they adjust. Every defensive position we establish, they probe for weaknesses. Could be another mole. Or they're just that good. Elena stared at the tactical map spread across their table. We're reacting instead of acting. We need to change that. What are you thinking? I'm thinking we stop playing defense and start playing offense. We've been trying to protect what we have. What if we go after what they have instead? Lucian's expression shifted. You want to strike first. I want to disrupt their operations enough that they're forced to defend instead of attack. Hit their supply lines, their recruitment networks, their infrastructure. Make them react to us. That's aggressive, risky. Everything about this is risky. At least this way we're driving the action. Elena met his eyes. Unless you think it's a bad idea? I think it's brilliant and terrifying and exactly what we need to do. He pulled her close. When did you become so good at strategy? I learned from the best. They presented the plan to the council. The response was cautiously supportive. No one loved the idea of escalating conflict, but everyone recognized they were already in a war, whether they acknowledged it or not. The operation launched 3 days later. Coordinated strikes across the city, hitting the Eastern Organization's operations simultaneously. It wasn't about destruction, it was about disruption, forcing them to divert resources, revealing their networks, and demonstrating that the coalition wasn't as vulnerable as they'd assumed. The response was immediate and violent. The Eastern Organization struck back hard, targeting family businesses and personnel. There were casualties on both sides, and for 2 weeks the city teetered on the edge of all-out war. Elena barely slept, coordinating responses, managing the families, and trying to find a path forward that didn't end in complete destruction. Lucian was her constant, handling tactical operations while she managed strategy and politics. Then Santos called with unexpected news. They want to negotiate. Elena felt relief and suspicion in equal measure. Why? Because we hurt them worse than they expected. They came in thinking we were disorganized and weak. Instead, they found a coordinated force that fights back intelligently. That's not what they signed up for. What are they offering? Territory sharing. They keep what they've established, we keep what we have, and we agree to coexist peacefully. That's not a solution. That's just delaying the inevitable conflict. Maybe, but it buys us time. Time to strengthen defenses, build alliances, and prepare for whatever comes next. Santos paused. Sometimes the smart move is accepting a draw instead of pushing for victory. Elena discussed it with Lucian that night. What do you think? I think we're exhausted, our resources are stretched, and we've lost good people in this fight. A negotiated peace, even a temporary one, might be the best we can hope for right now. But it feels like giving up. It's not giving up. It's being strategic about which battles we fight. He pulled her onto the couch beside him. You wanted to build something sustainable, remember? Something that lasts beyond violence. That means knowing when to fight and when to negotiate. When did you become the voice of restraint? When I fell in love with someone who taught me there are other ways to win. They negotiated for 3 days. Elena represented the coalition, facing off against a man named Dmitri who led the Eastern Organization. He was smart, calculating, and willing to be reasonable as long as it served his interests. You've built something impressive here, Dmitri said during one session. The coalition. Not many could pull off what you have. Thank you. You've built something formidable as well, but not something that can survive open war with you. I recognize that now. Dmitri leaned back. So we find a way to coexist. We divide the city, not evenly, but fairly. We establish clear boundaries and protocols for when those boundaries need to shift. We both profit, we both survive. And when you decide you want more, Elena challenged, then we renegotiate, like civilized people. Dmitri smiled. Or we go to war, and we both lose everything. I prefer profit to principle. The agreement was finalized at a neutral location with both sides present and witnesses from legitimate businesses to ensure compliance. Territory was divided, protocols established, and a fragile peace constructed from mutual self-interest. "It's not perfect," Elena told the council afterward, "but it's stable, and it gives us breathing room to strengthen what we've built." "You did well," her father said, speaking publicly for one of the last times before his full retirement. "Better than I could have. You found a way to win without destroying everything in the process." The words meant more than Elena expected. She'd spent so long trying to prove herself, to earn her place. Now, finally, she felt like she had. The engagement party was small, intimate, just family and the closest allies. Elena wore a simple dress and her mother's ring, feeling the weight of past and future balanced on her finger. Lucien looked uncomfortable in his formal suit, but he stood beside her without complaint, as people offered congratulations and well wishes. Even Moretti managed something that might have been genuine happiness, though it was hard to tell with him. To Elena and Lucien, Santos raised his glass, who proved that love and power can coexist. May your partnership be long, prosperous, and only moderately violent. Everyone laughed. It was a strange moment, dangerous people celebrating something gentle, criminals toasting to love. But it was real, and it was theirs. Later, when most guests had left, Elena's father pulled her aside. "Your mother and I had 30 years together. Some of them were hard, some were terrifying, but all of them mattered. I hope you and Lucien have even longer." "Thank you, Dad." "And Elena? You've exceeded every expectation I had, every hope. I'm so proud of who you've become." The words broke something open in her chest. She hugged him tightly, this man who'd protected her maybe too much, but always out of love. The wedding happened 3 months later. Not a grand affair. They'd both seen enough spectacle to last a lifetime. Instead, it was quiet, meaningful, with vows that promised partnership and honesty instead of obedience and perfection. "I can't promise this will be easy," Lucien said, holding her hands. "I can't promise I won't make mistakes, or that we won't fight, or that I'll always make the right choice. But I can promise I'll always choose you, always fight for us, always love you, even when it's hard." "I promise the same," Elena replied. "And I promise to challenge you, to push you, to never let you settle for less than we're capable of together. I promise to be your partner in every sense, in love, in business, in building something that matters." They kissed, and it felt like a beginning instead of an ending, the start of something neither of them could have imagined a year ago. The year that followed brought new challenges, of course. The peace with Dimitri's organization held, but required constant management. The coalition evolved, adding new families and expanding into legitimate businesses. Elena and Lucien balanced their relationship with their responsibilities, learning when to separate personal and professional and when to let them blur together. They fought. They made up. They made decisions that kept them up at night and celebrated victories that felt impossibly sweet because of how hard they'd been won. Elena's role expanded beyond just the family to the entire coalition. She became the mediator, the strategist, the voice of reason when old grudges threatened everything. It was exhausting and exhilarating, and exactly what she'd been preparing for her entire life without knowing it. Lucien stepped more fully into his role as enforcer and protector, but with a subtlety that came from Elena's influence. He learned to solve problems through pressure and leverage instead of just violence, though he never lost the edge that made him dangerous. Together, they rebuilt the family's operations with an eye toward sustainability. They invested in legitimate businesses, established educational programs for younger members, and created pathways out of the life for those who wanted them. "You're changing the culture," Marco observed one day, "making it about more than just survival." "Is that bad?" Elena asked. "No, it's just different. Revolutionary, even." He smiled. "Your mother would love it." The thought of her mother stayed with Elena constantly. The woman who'd chosen this life, who'd fought and died for something she believed in. Elena wore her ring every day, a reminder that choice was power, that she could have run, could have built a different life, but instead had chosen to stay and transform the one she had. 18 months after the engagement party, on a quiet evening in their apartment, Lucien brought up a question they'd been dancing around. "What comes next for us?" he asked. Elena looked up from the report she'd been reviewing. What do you mean? We've stabilized the coalition, established peace with Dmitri, modernized the family operations. We've built what we set out to build. He set down his own work. But what comes next? What do we want beyond just maintaining what we have? It was a fair question. They'd been so focused on survival and growth that they hadn't thought much about what came after success. I want to expand the legitimate operations, Elena said slowly, thinking it through. Build something that could eventually transition fully away from the criminal side. Not tomorrow, maybe not for years, but as a long-term goal. That would take decades, multiple generations. I know, but that's the point. We build something that outlasts us, that gives the next generation options we never had. She met his eyes. And I want a family, children who can choose their own path, who don't have to carry the weight we've carried. Lucien was quiet for a long moment. I never thought about children. Never let myself think about it because I didn't believe I'd live long enough for it to matter. And now? Now I think about it constantly. About what kind of father I'd be, what kind of world we'd be raising them in, whether it's fair to bring children into this life. My mother did. Your mother did. And we turned out… Elena paused. Actually, we're kind of a mess. He laughed. We're functional messes, that's something. We could be better for them. We could build something safer, more stable. Give them choices we had to fight for. You really want this? I really want this, with you, a future that's about more than just survival. Lucien pulled her close, and Elena felt the certainty of it settle around them. This was the next chapter. Building not just an empire, but a legacy. Something that mattered beyond power and profit. The announcement came 6 months later. Elena was pregnant. The response from the families was mixed but generally positive. A new generation meant stability, continuity, hope that what they'd built would last. You're going to be impossible during this pregnancy, Lucien predicted, refusing to slow down, working until the last possible minute, probably trying to attend council meetings while in labor. I'm not that bad. You absolutely are. It's one of the things I love about you. He was right, of course. Elena worked through the pregnancy, managing the coalition and expanding their legitimate operations. She established trust funds for the children of families who'd lost members in the conflict with Dmitri's organization. She created job training programs and educational scholarships. She built infrastructure for a future that looked different from the past. And when their daughter was born, small, perfect, with Lucien's dark hair and Elena's determined expression, everything shifted into focus. She's beautiful, Dominic said, holding his granddaughter with careful reverence. What are you naming her? Isabella, Elena said, after my mother. Her father's eyes filled with tears. She would be so honored. Holding Isabella, feeling the weight of this tiny life that depended on them completely, Elena understood her mother's choice in a way she never had before. The willingness to fight, to risk everything, to build something worth dying for. Because now Elena had something worth living for, worth transforming the entire world for, if that's what it took. We're going to make this better for her, she told Lucien late one night, watching their daughter sleep. All of this, the violence, the danger, the impossible choices, we're going to build something that gives her options. We will, Lucien agreed, even if it takes the rest of our lives. The years that followed were a study in balance. Elena and Lucien raised Isabella while running the coalition, managing threats while building toward peace, honoring the past while creating a different future. The coalition continued to evolve. More families joined, drawn by stability and profit sharing that actually worked. The legitimate businesses expanded until they generated more revenue than the criminal operations. And slowly, carefully, they began transitioning, not abandoning their roots entirely, but building something that could exist in daylight. It wasn't smooth. There were setbacks, betrayals, moments when everything threatened to collapse. But they'd built something resilient enough to survive mistakes, something based on trust and mutual benefit instead of just fear. Elena stood in the same council chamber 5 years after first proposing the coalition, looking around at faces that had become familiar. Some had changed. Moretti had retired, replaced by his more progressive son. New families had joined, the dynamics had shifted. but the core remained. A group of people who'd learned, however reluctantly, that cooperation was more profitable than conflict. "I have an announcement," Dominic said, speaking from his permanent position as council advisor rather than active leader. "The Varelli family is officially transitioning majority operations to legitimate business. We'll maintain our commitments to the coalition, but our focus going forward is building something sustainable for the next generation." The room erupted in discussion. Some families supported it, seeing the writing on the wall. Others resisted, clinging to tradition. But no one could deny the success of what they'd built. "This is the future," Elena said when the room quieted. "Not just for the Varellis, but for all of us. We can keep doing what we've always done, fighting, surviving, barely staying ahead of the law. Or we can build something that lasts, something our children can be proud of instead of running from." "And those of us who don't want to change?" Castellano challenged. "Then you don't. The coalition isn't about forcing everyone down the same path. It's about creating options, supporting each other whether we're building legitimate empires or maintaining traditional operations." Elena met his eyes. "But I'd encourage you to think about what you want your legacy to be, what you want to leave behind." The vote to support the Varelli transition was overwhelming, and in that moment, Elena saw the future she'd been building toward. A world where the choice her mother had made, to stay and fight, led somewhere beyond just more fighting. That night, she found Lucien on their balcony, watching the city lights. He'd aged well, a few lines around his eyes, but still the same man who'd stood in an elevator and confessed he'd loved her for years. "We did it," she said, wrapping her arms around him from behind. "Did what?" "Built something that matters, changed the world, even if just our corner of it." "You built it. I just tried to keep up." "We built it together, like everything else." She rested her head against his shoulder. "Do you ever regret it? Choosing this life with me instead of something simpler?" Every day, he said, then smiled at her expression. "I regret the danger you've been in, the threats, the fear, the times I thought I might lose you, but I don't regret us. Not for a second." "Good, because I don't either." They stood there in comfortable silence, watching their city. The empire they'd built wasn't perfect. It was messy and complicated and still carried the weight of its violent past. But it was also hopeful, evolving, and built on something more substantial than fear. Inside, Isabella slept peacefully, unaware of the legacy being shaped around her. She would grow up with choices her parents never had, with the freedom to walk away or dive deeper, to build something entirely new or honor what came before. And that, Elena thought, was the point. Not perfection, but possibility. Not escaping the darkness, but transforming it into something that could hold light. She'd run toward the very thing she'd tried to escape, and in doing so had found everything she'd been looking for. Love, purpose, home, a partnership that made her stronger instead of smaller, a life that mattered beyond just survival. "What are you thinking?" Lucien asked. "That I was wrong about a lot of things. About what strength looks like. About what love requires. About what's worth fighting for." She turned to face him. "But I was right about you. About us." He kissed her, soft and certain, and Elena felt the truth of it settle into her bones. This was what her mother had chosen. What Elena herself had chosen. Not because it was easy or safe, but because some things were worth the cost. They'd built an empire on trust and partnership, on the revolutionary idea that power didn't have to corrupt, that love could coexist with danger, that people could change if given the right reasons and the right support. It wasn't the fairy tales she'd dreamed of as a girl. It was better, real and flawed and hard-won, and absolutely worth every impossible choice that had led them here. In a world built on control and fear, they'd become something rare. Two people who refused to run from who they were or what they'd built, who chose each other every day, even when it was hard, who proved that love and power, gentleness and strength, hope and reality could exist in the same breath. They'd transformed their corner of darkness into something that could sustain light. And in doing so, they'd found not just survival but meaning, not just an empire but a home. The city stretched out before them, full of possibility and threat in equal measure. But Elena wasn't afraid anymore. She'd learned that the strongest thing you could do wasn't running from fear, it was standing in it, hand in hand with someone who saw you completely and loved you anyway. She'd built an empire, but more importantly, she'd built a life. With purpose, with partnership, with love that refused to be diminished by the darkness surrounding it. And that was worth everything.